right?
That's true.
No, I realized that as soon as it came out of my mouth. I'm sorry, I apologize for that one.
I can't believe I'm reading.
No, I appreciate it. It's one of those things that I grew up hearing and I'll erase it.
All right, I'm going to call the regular Ridgway Town Council meeting of Wednesday, July 13, 2022 to order and ask for a roll call.
Council members Ennis. Solon.
Yeah.
Bramley.
Here.
Bacon.
Here.
Schuyler.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We've got a couple people here in Town Hall, and then most of us here in the room, and Polly is at home, I think, because her husband is quarantining. So that takes us to additions and or deletions to the agenda. Got anything?
I do. I'd like to add to the consent agenda the renewal of the restaurant liquor license for provisions.
Okay.
I have one, Mayor. A discussion item under policy matters, a discussion regarding the scope of development pressure the town staff is really seeing at this point.
Possible things we could consider to deal with that.
Essentially, but
yeah,
for purposes of right now,
just
conversation.
Just a conversation. Gotcha. And we'll move that to, we'll make that number 14 under policy matters. Or does anybody want to bring that up sooner? I think it's fine. Just move it to the end of that section. Anything else?
Nothing else from staff.
Okay. All righty then, that brings us to the consent calendar, which is a few items that are considered routine and can be enacted by one motion. Is there anything on there anybody wants to pull off to discuss separately, including the provisions renewal, their license renewal? And if not, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? So moved.
Second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Council members Ennis.
Aye.
Bramley.
Aye.
Bacon.
Aye.
Schuyler.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Aye. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Next up is public comments. Establish time on the agenda for the public to address council regarding any item that's not otherwise on the agenda. Comments limited to 5 minutes per person. Anybody have a public comment? Anybody online?
See any hands on Zoom?
All right. Then we'll move on to public requests and presentations. Item number 6 is a presentation of the Uriah and San Miguel County Regional Climate Action Plan. And I will ask Emma and Kim to come up and present to us. Welcome.
Thank you. Slides, right?
Yep, 1 second.
I haven't been in person for quite a while. So it kind of feels like a new experience.
You got legs.
Just we can appear outside of the Zoom screen.
I have a quick question. Can everybody online hear us okay? Anybody not? All right, go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Emma German, the Executive Director of Eco Action Partners. I'm joined here today by Kim. Kim Wheels with Eco Action, the energy specialist or energy geek.
Speak up.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to present to you our regional climate action plan. We're going to start today with a brief introduction to the National Energy Board. If you could go to the next slide, please. Take a look at what climate action planning is and why it matters. Look at our timeline, a brief introduction to our greenhouse gas inventory and forecasting. I know you've all seen those charts before. We'll spend most of our time on a sector overview, looking at objectives and actions, and then we'll leave time at the end for input and questions. So the Snaffles Energy Board, which led this process, is a regional collaborative board that was created in 2009 to address sustainability initiatives. It's made up of utility, citizen, and government representatives, and is helping to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions across the region. So they created our original 2010 sustainability plan and have led this process. So before getting any deeper, I'd like to talk about why climate action planning matters. It not only helps to mitigate risk, but it creates opportunities. So we're looking at actions that are helping support our environmental, but also economic and social benefits in our communities. It helps reestablish our commitment to igniting change in our community, holds us accountable for the changes that we want to see, and helps act as a roadmap so that we know where we are and where we need to go to reach our goals. It also helps, as we see obstacles approach in the future, adapt to those and be able to have more proactive measures instead of just reactive programming. So what is the climate action plan? This plan, as I mentioned, is a roadmap. So understanding where we are, what our sustainability goals are, and how we need to get there. It's a 10-year plan, so we have 1, 3, 5, and 10-year goals, and it covers 8 sectors with 21 objectives and 74 actions. It is a high-level guiding document, so we're looking at regional actions and focusing on community-wide collaboration. It was developed utilizing stakeholder engagement, community outreach, analysis, and modeling. And lastly, it was focused on being measurable and target-oriented. So we really wanted to look at goals that could help reduce our emissions and where we can have the biggest impact. This was a next slide, comprehensive approach to planning. We saw that across our region with a lot of shared regional resources, this need for collaboration towards these goals. We have a lot of common challenges across our region with increases in tourism, the cost of living going up, shortages of affordable housing, and a lot of our workforce and goods coming in from surrounding communities that tie us to this broader Western Slope region. So because of this, we saw the need to approach this process from a regional perspective. And within this plan, that is this umbrella, we do have community-wide and government-specific actions. So this is a brief overview of what you will see in each of the sectors. Each sector has objectives, so those big picture goals, and then under that specific actions, so the smaller scale projects, policies, and programs that we will need to achieve those objectives. For each of those, we look at the greenhouse gas emission reduction potential, timeline, so how many years it's expected, key partners, and then as I mentioned, those co-benefits. So whether it's promoting equity, economic sustainability, building resilience in our communities, and helping support public health and safety. This is our timeline. So what we are presenting to you today was the Snaffles Energy Board level plan. We were in the middle of number 2, the public engagement process. We wanted to bring this plan to the public to really have these actions represent the needs and priorities of our diverse communities. So we're really excited to get input from you all today. And the focus going forward is action implementation. So we want to get these programs on the ground, help move towards our goals. So a lot of the input that we're looking for and what we'll share with you today is focused on that implementation piece. And I will pass it off to Kim.
So an important part of climate action planning starts with informed decision making so we can prioritize what actions to take. We need to understand our greenhouse gas emissions. How much do we emit? Where do they come from? What impacts them from year to year? And so on behalf of the Snaffles Energy Board, Eco Action Partners has been tracking and analyzing our emissions for over a decade. We used a tool that was developed for us in 2010 when community greenhouse gas inventories were in their infancy. And since then, the processes have changed and the global protocol has been developed. So we've just recently transitioned over to an online tool produced by ICLEI. It's called ClearPath, which will help streamline our process, ensure consistency with global greenhouse gas inventory protocol and updates to that process. And then it also provides us with forecasting capabilities, the ability to compare and contrast with other 300 other US communities that are part of ICLEI's program, and provides us with access to ICLEI's other resources. This next slide shows a pie chart, which is the representation of our breakdown of 2020 greenhouse gas emissions. It shows it in categories. Note that the blue section is electricity and natural gas. Those are our utility use associated with residential and commercial buildings. The red sections represent transportation related to vehicle and airline travel. And then the green sections represent our emissions from our food, material use, and our waste. All of these sectors are focused on within the climate action plan. This next chart shows a forecast of business as usual. It's what would happen if we continued, if our tourism economy continues to increase at the current rate and we took no further local actions. It does include an emissions reduction associated with tri-states and thus SMPA's commitment to 50% of renewable energy supply by 2024 and 100% by 2040. But you can see that through that alone, we will not reach our 2030 and 2050 goals. So it really validates the need for local climate action and planning wisely so that we do reach our goals. This next slide chart shows that we added additional local strategies to reduce emissions. So actions beyond what is committed to by Tri-State and SMPA. We've prioritized reducing building energy use, driving them towards zero through renewables and energy efficiency measures and electrification. But you can see that we still need to create additional policies and actions in order to reduce emissions related to transportation and our material consumption, which are very much driven by our tourism-based economy. Back to that. Thank you.
So these are the 8 sectors that we've included in the CAP, and they came directly from the emissions forecast that Kim was talking about, with the addition of community engagement and policy. We're going to walk through each of these right now and talk a little bit more about the goals and objectives for each of these sectors. I did want to take a moment to point out the town of Ridgway specific actions. So because this is a regional plan, we wanted to include an appendix for each specific jurisdiction, because we understand that you all have your own priorities as an individual community. So I just wanted to pull out this page because we will be focusing most of our conversation today on those bigger actions, to mention that we do have these specifics for Ridgway, and we do appreciate the effort on moving towards your own climate related goals. Thank you. As I mentioned, we are focusing on implementation moving forward. So Eco Action is developing a tool to track our progress towards our goals. So moving away from the public-facing climate action plan towards this kind of messy spreadsheet. This is just a little snapshot from one of the sectors of it, understanding our progress at each jurisdiction within all of our partnering organizations, looking at all these sectors. So these meetings, these work sessions, and others are helping us fill this out, and we are looking to keep this filled out going forward so that we can understand where we are. So the first sector, community engagement and policy, the main goal here is to integrate emissions analysis into all of our decision making. I talked about the intersectional nature of climate action, so not only looking at the environmental benefits, the economic benefits, health benefits, and so we really want climate action, our greenhouse gas emissions impact to be talked about across the board from our communities. And as Kim was talking about, we want to mention that individual actions do make a difference in requesting change from our communities. So the main objective here, increasing community engagement and prioritizing collaborative and intersectional decision making. A couple actions here that I thought were important to highlight are just considering emissions as part of our decision making process, and then increasing community level outreach and engagement within the CAP. So this is a really nice umbrella sector that will help apply to the rest as we go forward.
So the next sector of our CAP is energy supply. And as noted before, related to greenhouse gas forecasting, our sources of energy definitely impact our emissions. So we prioritize continuing to transition to renewable sources of energy, and our regional plan is in line with SMPA, Tri-State, and Colorado State goals. This next chart is in the Climate Action Plan, and it shows the transition. It was developed with help from SMPA. It shows our transition from non-fossil fuel sources of electricity. In 2010, we had 14% non-fossil fuel based, and now we have, as of 2020, 37%. It's currently about almost 40 now. Harry can speak to that more specifically, but renewable energy continues to come online, so we've made quite a bit of progress. And I just wanted to point out too that local voices and actions have influenced this change. We've definitely made a difference with Tri-State's policies, and SMPA is now allowed to develop an additional 2% of generation through community solar projects.
I'll inject real quickly that that's under review by FERC, and it may not actually materialize.
Well,
It doesn't mean that we're not pursuing it by other means. Just as an update to that.
What's further?
Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has challenged Tri-State's ability to do this, saying it's not equitable to the other co-ops in Tri-State. But we're still pursuing that goal, just that we may have to get more creative.
Everybody should just be allowed to do an additional 2%. Let's make it fair to everyone.
Talk to the hand.
So our plan aims to support SMPA with that additional 2% in renewable energy and community solar projects. And also just continuing to increase our supply of electricity from renewable sources. Some of the specific actions include just identifying and eliminating barriers to any barriers that might exist to local renewable energy production. Certainly any government buildings where it makes sense to install renewable energy capacity, encouraging community participation in SMPA's Totally Green program, which definitely has been taking off here in Ridgway as well as across the region, and which Ridgway is a part of as well, the town of Ridgway, and then supporting SMPA with us in solar arrays. The next sector focuses on building energy use. And as noted before, building energy use is almost 50% of our emissions, both come from commercial and residential energy use. The actual energy use is tracked and it's shown in the climate action plan itself. I can show them here as a, just trying not to overdo the slides and charts. But we do track electricity and natural gas annually per community so that we can understand both external influences and the success of numerous programs that have aimed to reduce building energy use. The commercial or the community data that we do have shows a notable COVID-related decrease for both commercial and residential electricity associated with tourism being less as far as people staying in the region during 2020. So it's easy to see that direct relation between visitor numbers and tourism economy. It also reflects accomplishments that we've made through our energy efficiency program, the SMPA Totally Green program, and then net metered solar systems. So I wanted to highlight a bit the first objective in the plan is beneficial electrification. It's a new one. Changing over to electricity from natural gas and fossil fuels is now beneficial due to that increase in renewable energy in our electricity supply mix. We've also had improvement and advancements in technology, such as heat pumps that are now available and work well in our cold climate. Natural gas stoves that can effectively replace, electric induction cooktops that can effectively replace natural gas stoves, and other electric appliances that have been developed in the past few years. So it's a huge opportunity to switch away from fossil fuels, which cannot be 100% renewable, and over to electricity, in which we are transitioning toward that. Well, this next slide just identifies other objectives. It didn't show the slides with all of the actions. There's a lot under building energy use because it is such a big sector, and we are aiming primarily first to identify and reduce that building energy use. So it includes building energy codes, working with the Zebra Committee here in Ridgway to aim toward net zero energy construction, increasing natural gas, the efficiency of using natural gas in buildings, reducing energy consumption in multifamily buildings, apartments, rentals, addressing the energy efficiency performance of existing buildings. The existing building stock is a really big challenge because it can't be addressed by new building codes without projects that go through an addition or significant remodel. And then just there's a much larger contingency of people wanting air conditioning, not only due to the temperature increases due to climate change, but also due to summertime smoke and wanting a way to bring in fresh outdoor air that is filtered. And so instead of encouraging high efficiency air conditioning, which is no longer as high efficiency it can be, again, encouraging heat pumps is the answer and the solution. So working with SMPA on their rebates and really pushing to develop that field of contractors and the demand from the public. And then the next slide, I just wanted to highlight that our green business program is in here because it focuses primarily on working with businesses to reduce their energy use and other sustainability initiatives. The next sector in the climate action plan is transportation. The transportation accounts for approximately 29% of our regional emissions, so it's the second highest. We depend on bringing in workforce, material goods, and visitors from outside of our region. And as our economy increases, so do our transportation emissions. The next slide shows the impact on these emissions due to increase in vehicle travel over the past 10 years. Our emissions have increased just due to diesel and gasoline vehicles coming into the region by 24%. This does not include any OHV travel, which is currently not trackable during using current accounting methodologies. So our actions aim to reduce vehicle use within the community. Next slide. Reduce the vehicle use within the community. And one of the ways to do that is to increase affordable and available housing for local workers, Jane was a priority for Ridgway as well as the other communities around. And then on the next slide, we focus on electric vehicles. So electrifying fleet vehicles when viable, and Eco Action Partners through the Sniffles Energy Board is initiating a regional EV readiness plan. We've just applied for grants for that, so hopefully we'll get the funding very soon, and so that we have the infrastructure ready for the transition to EVs locally and from our visitors and other vehicles that come in.
Ridgway proper, throw their hat in that ring, I don't recall. In the grant process?
We focused on just with the counties, the conversations.
So it was just who you rate.
Just the county, yeah, to move the grant process forward, but through the Sniffles Energy Board, Ridgway is definitely included. And just a part of that EV readiness plan, that's to focus on infrastructure, so infrastructure for the public, infrastructure that gaps that exist on the highways, as well as infrastructure for the government. So we will be reaching out to each government to identify what would be needed for your own transition to EVs. So moving on to aviation, which is part of transportation as well. This chart just shows that aviation travel has increased steadily since 2014, outside of a COVID-related drop in 2020. And this increase is up 66% over our baseline. One thing that you may not number is that, these numbers include both Telluride and Montrose airports. We have 75% of travelers in and out of the Montrose airport come to our region. So we definitely look at and consider what is happening at that airport in addition to the Telluride airport.
Where does the 75% come from?
That's straight from Montrose airport data.
That's their.
Mm-hmm. So the objectives for this sector focus on decreasing airline emissions, greenhouse gas emissions per passenger for both airports. Back to him.
So our next sector is waste. It's about 4% of our regional emissions. On average, our per person waste generation is slightly below the Colorado state average, but it is almost double the national average. And we see that across the state, and we think a lot of that is because of the dependence on tourism and because a lot of our materials are being transported from other locations. So there's objectives here. I'm gonna go to the next slide. Thank you. So the first objective is focusing on just reducing the overall volume of our waste transported to landfills. So looking at a number of different opportunities to do that, reduce, reuse, recycle, composting options, supporting our businesses with their waste reduction opportunities, expanding our plastic film program, which we have running here in Ridgway. And then one we wanted to point out was improving the data availability from our waste haulers so that we can understand what's actually happening with our waste better than we have right now. The second objective here, increasing composting use and capacity in the region. And then lastly, decreasing construction and demolition waste. Moving on to food, about 11% of our region's greenhouse gas emissions. And again, with much of our food being grown, produced, processed, and transported from other areas, there is a large greenhouse gas emission footprint associated with that, but also a lot of opportunities to support our local ag producers and local small businesses. So the main objective here is focusing on that local organic natural food production and consumption. Next slide. Thank you. And just continuing to increase that local food supply, helping to incentivize new methods to expand our growing season and developing food production monitoring programs.
So water and wastewater are definitely a priority as well. Water is a high priority in our region for many different reasons. We focus on primarily what impacts greenhouse gas emissions for the purposes of the Climate Action Plan. And we've been tracking the data of water use and wastewater treatment since 2010 per community so that we can understand what influences those changes. And the data definitely shows a direct relation between water use and the wastewater treatment and our visitor numbers. So again, as tourism economy increases, it impacts our water use, and we need to understand and track those associated emissions. Some of the successes that have been put into place were just the drought mitigation measures in many communities, and we do see that effective reduction for the years that drought restrictions are in place. So I want to commend the towns that have done that, such as Ridgway, for that, because it definitely makes a difference. The objectives here focus on reducing water consumption from municipal and industrial users, and then improving watershed health and security across the region.
So last but not least is land, understanding our use and health, sequestration opportunities, and then agricultural uses. We just wanted to point out a couple accomplishments here, looking at land use inventories that were developed in 2019. San Miguel County also established a baseline soil health study. We are helping spread the word about the San Miguel County Payment for Ecosystem Services program as well, which is a really exciting pilot program, helping farmers and ranchers improve their soil and increase water capacity through incentive programs. So we're excited to see that growing and hopefully expanding across our region. We, through this process, took a look at our land use cover. So understanding that forests make up the vast majority of our region's ecosystem, it's just over 70% in Ridgway County. And understanding that this has a huge sequestration opportunity. So looking at the health of our forests when we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals is really important. On the next slide, we were able to map forest disturbances from 2001 to 2016. Looking at the impacts from fire, insect, and harvest changes. And so I think we have been pretty lucky in this region compared to other places in our state. With insect damage, it is still pretty jarring to see the growth in damage across our region over those 15 years. And this impact takes three forms. So it not only prevents our forests from removing carbon from the atmosphere, increases the risk of severe fires and mudslides. It also disrupts our soil stability, flood control, wildlife habitat, and nutrient exchange. So really big impacts on this decrease in forest health, and just points again to the need for local action. The objectives here are threefold, looking at the sequestration and retention capacity of our land and plant life, and then increasing the yield and health of our crops and livestock through regenerative agricultural practices. So looking at that Payment for Ecosystem Services program and others like it. So I know that was a lot of information and kind of flying through a lot of actions and details for each of those 8 sectors. I don't want to take up too much of our time today, but some of the ongoing discussion questions that we are looking for input on, I'm wondering if any actions seem to be missing or if there was any that we've included, looking at any additional ideas for the Ridgway community or government in terms of implementation of these actions, and then ongoing discussions about the barriers to implementation that we might foresee. I don't know how we're doing on time, if we have time to open it up for discussion on these. Or if any of you have questions or input on any of those sectors.
Thank you, guys. That's great. Does anybody up here in council have questions for these guys?
If we had some later, could we send them to you?
Yes, of course. So in these slides, and I included it in the memo as well, we do have a survey on our website that we're sending out to the public, all of our community stakeholders to get input on each of these sectors. So if you have any input and want to take the survey, we appreciate that, or you have our emails, please reach out. We will also be at the Erie County Commissioners meeting tomorrow morning, and we're going to have a table at the Farmers Market in Ridgway on the 22nd, so next Friday. Not this coming one, but next week after that. So come visit us. We're happy to chat more about the actions, get in depth about this, and focus on the areas that you have interest or questions. It's a lot to look at it all at once. If you go to the next slide, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge everyone who's helped participate in developing this plan. It really was a collaborative process, and we couldn't have done it without all of you, all of our representatives on the Snap's Energy Board, organizations across the communities, and other stakeholders who have given their input in this process. And with that, I'll open it up to any other questions. Our emails are here and our office phone number. Please don't hesitate to reach out if anything comes up. Thank you.
I definitely have some other follow-up questions, but as you were going through all the different sectors, you mentioned sometimes there were certain places that it was hard to find data. But in the grand scope of this very comprehensive approach of this, what are the things you guys struggle with going forward? What are your blind spots that you're struggling to work on, and what kind of additional help do you need to make this even more comprehensive?
Yeah, I want to go back for that one to our forecasting slide really quickly. Sorry.
And actually, I should have started that too.
Yeah, no worries.
Congratulations, because it's incredibly comprehensive. I mean, compared to regions and communities and big municipalities, a lot of big municipalities, cities like San Francisco and New York City struggle to come up with something with this much scope. So kudos.
I feel like with the local, like we've been existing here for a while, and with a local perspective, we are able to add in more detail than other communities that might have brought in other outside contractors or whatnot to do the same type of thing. So that's part of, thank you, because it definitely has a lot of detail that others don't for that reason, I think. And the input from the Snap's Energy Board that again is local.
Big collaborative process.
Yeah.
Just an update to one of the town of Ridgway's appendix specific initiatives of encouraging installation of solar on the space decree. I have worked with the art space folks and the developer to go ahead and pre-install conduit to the roof as well as to the back where there could be a carport, a solar carport put in, as well as an extra emergency panel and conduit in the Ridgway community space, the 2,000 square foot that we have in case we want to put a battery backup and turn that into an emergency shelter. So that was incorporated into the budget and was installed ahead of the final construction.
Great.
So it's now solar ready, so to speak.
Great, that's exciting. So yeah, JT, to your point, I wanted to point out this forecast again, looking at those lines, the dotted lines where our state goals are. And this is the chart that includes our local actions that we have agreed to pursue as a region. And we're clearly not reaching our goals yet. So that is a big challenge moving forward. The actions that we've already identified won't be enough to reach the goals that we would like to see. So we're going to need to work together as a community, both from our government, from individuals and organizations, to be creative about this process. And I think this forecasting capability was new with our ICLEI membership. So we're really excited to have that and understand how these actions change things going forward and just have more data to understand those impacts. But it's not enough right now. So we're excited to see, the conversations around it and getting more creative about these actions and coming together in ways that we haven't in the past to reach these goals.
And we do have through ICLEI some more resources at our fingertips. We're just started the western half of the state's cohort today, so we're communicating more with the others. So I think EVs might be an example of what isn't very well modeled here, because we don't quite know yet what ideal modeling would be for EVs, but it shows a decrease, and then we're transitioned, and then the use of vehicles is going to continue to increase. So just kind of looking at details like that is a little challenging to know into the future at the moment, but we're hoping to improve upon the modeling as we go forward.
and it really gives you the data and some tools, but I imagine that the human capacity for you guys to actually do this and for the outreach is a whole nother thing.
Well, and there's unknowns that either haven't been modeled or haven't been studied, or we just don't know quite what their results will be, but hoping to get that guidance. It's kind of similar with waste modeling. We have never gotten accurate waste data from our waste haulers since year one. So how do we track our reduction if we can't obtain the data that we need? And so been trying to encourage municipalities to include in the contracts, when those contracts come up for renewal, to include a requirement for data to be provided, so that then we're also trying to work at state level, or asking our representatives at state level to work on that behalf for us, so that then the data is required across all waste haulers.
Does that same kind of thing also apply to the food sector as well, food and ag,
Mhm.
trying to get data from that nexus?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
That's one of our gaps, is we don't have a local food study to know exactly where food comes from. So we're using an average number from Denver that was done by a study there at the moment, because it's the best data that we've got.
So that's one of the actions in the food section, is for the study to be completed.
But it's certainly, in the meantime, continuing to increase that volume that's either produced across the region or then sold at local farmers markets. You know, we can track that side of things. And you've got, well, this is what our average is, and this is what's being increased. And so we can at least show progress in that way.
Moving target.
Exactly. Yeah, so that we're not standing still when we don't have the data. There's still actions that we know will help.
Anyone else?
That was a great question. Thanks, Kevin.
Anybody online?
Don't see any hands online.
I certainly know and heard that Ridgway just created a sustainability committee. And so, you know, if there's further ideas or working with them to kind of enhance the Ridgway specific actions, I definitely anticipate that being part of it. We have had a work session with ROC already, the energy group, and had a very productive discussion in that group as well. So
Is that the
definitely,
zebra group you're referring to?
that's a subcommittee of
That's a
the,
subcommittee.
yeah.
The Clean Energy.
Oh,
Subcommittee of the Clean Energy Committee of
right. Third one.
Well, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, y'all. Appreciate it.
All right. Takes us to item number 7, questions regarding eminent domain and condemnation property. Kuno.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
I have a questions about a couple of pieces of property here in town that I think maybe the last means would be condemnation or eminent domain, but I think we should find a more peaceful approach. This is the first picture of in front here. You see lot up there is Terry Schuler's truck over there. It's an overview. I'm taking the picture from the school property that's behind River Park subdivision. And I'm looking straight down onto David Sneed's property that has been contentious, to say the least. Give a little history here. About 20 some years ago, the town accepted a plat for River Park subdivision, and part of that plat had provisions for public space and green space, but at that time there was no high school behind it, and that was later built, but without having any guaranteed access for pedestrians between the high school and the River Park subdivision. So today we have this path here that is now blocked and has been threatened with litigation and also trespassing and all this other stuff by, as some of you are well aware of. And I think it's imperative that we come to a solution for this before too long. It's been lingering for a few years. Not much was done in the last few years that I know of. I contacted David Sneed, and his first answer is always, I'm not interested in selling. However, it's also, I'm aware that he took the town and San Miguel Power to court over installing something through this property that we're looking at here. In the first, from the.
There's an easement, there's a
Yeah, there's a-
utility easement.
I know, there's, from here over, 20 feet over, this is the property line, 20 feet over is an easement, but the easement, according to the plat, is only for sewer. And was not for water or for electricity, and that's what it was the ground for why he sued the town and San Miguel Power, because both water and electricity were installed through there, which gives them a reason to complain. Now, my first question would be, if there is original easement of sewer that goes through there, and later the town was sued over putting water in there, and there was obviously some kind of settlement, would be my guess. Why at that time we didn't pursue a pedestrian easement on top of this easement baffles me, because this seems to be the best solution to use our powers as the town to establish a pedestrian easement right on top of this street that we're looking at, because the street is already in the easement. It would not affect his property other than people walking by and noise factors, okay? If you can go to the next picture, please. This shows a little bit of a different view that's the electrical box that San Miguel Power had to reroute all their electricity all the way around the property because we didn't have illegal access through there. Next picture, please. This is what happens when you cut off something, it goes somewhere else like a balloon. So I went to the school concert a few weeks back, and at the end of the concert, not only children, but adults, grown-ups, everybody walked through that property. Maybe we could buy that property, maybe not. But it seems to me we need to address the fact that people want to flow through naturally, just like animals. They have their ways of walking through. Next picture, please. This is the view from down below at the bottom of the street. You can see it would be relatively easy to let people walk on top of this street that's already there. The original intent of this easement was to access these lots that are to the right, two of them, and the lot that's David's to the left, to have access to the back of the lot, and also to have access for the outlaying lot to a next picture, please. Yeah, this is kind of the flat is sort of upside down, but again, here we are. This is the undeveloped part here that was allowed. This part here is all. This part here that's undeveloped is allowed to use this as an access. This is allowed to use that as an access. So it seems to be. I don't understand why it's so hard to come to terms to get a pedestrian access in there. Next picture, please. This is the actual writing of what's allowed there. Outlaw T2-A is that developed, an undeveloped piece of property. And then if you go down a little bit, the next picture, I think it is. It shows that the 20-foot easement is exactly what it is limited to. So I think the town made a mistake of putting water through there without replatting the plat first. So, and David had a real reason to sue, but I think a bigger entity to sue the town would have been the homeowners association, because you violated the plat, that particular note right there. So I think the mistakes were done. Now we have to figure out how to get out of it. It's now about 20 years later, and this is where my question comes in with eminent domain. And condemnation. I know it's an unpleasant process, most likely, because it's adversarial. However, Mr. Sneed has been adversarial for a long time. I don't think it would hurt him much, is much more than already being, adverse to this. So I think it's only maybe our fear of being uncomfortable, and yet,
And money.
well, that's true. Wherever we find money to spend here and there, and we end up having it. So it's a question of priorities. And I think that is a priority. The safety of our children is more important than our own safety, because they're young and they're innocent and they can't defend themselves. I speak as a homeowner over there. I own 3 homes in the River Park subdivision that I rent out to families. And I like to guarantee those families that their children have pedestrian access, which is green, which is what we're talking about earlier. The most green thing to do is to either condemn it or see if we can raise the money. Seems to be plenty of money to be raised around here for various things, to buy the whole lot and make it an extension of the River Park open space and continue the park all the way to that edge. The town could own that piece or could own any other piece. There's a couple of them over there that are not sold yet, like the piece right next to that street is not sold. The one on the other, that's owned by somebody, I think, not in town. There's a house next to it where a woman lives that she's in full agreement that the children would be okay to walk through, that wouldn't bother her. So it seems that something needs to be done, and it needs to be done hopefully soon and before the school starts. Okay, because the school starts soon again. And I've spoken about this in front of the council, but only on Zoom a few months ago, and I haven't seen any action on this particular concern, and it bothers me. Okay, next picture, please. That's the first piece of property that bothers me. And this is a picture taken from right across from where Preston lives. That's the second piece of property that bothers me. What bothers me is the town is engaged in allowing a housing development from the Telluride Foundation to proceed with half a street. And I think that's ludicrous to build a half a street in a town that sees all the way out there, as far as you can see in that triangle. We'll see future development within the next few years. I think we should build the full street. And if I see that on the agenda item later, we do have something scheduled with regards to the Wolf Cattle Company, which is the owner of this piece of property. And I'm here only to encourage you to use all means possible to acquire that piece. And if you can't acquire it, condemn it. Money can be raised, just like the Telluride Valley floor was a good example of there's money out there that people believe in good causes. Whether we have the money or not, I think is not a good excuse to not proceed and not go forth with action that is in the benefit for the next 20 or 30 years. Next picture. That's the picture of the wide street right in front of Preston's house there on the corner. As you can see, people use the street for all kinds of things, parking and this and that. I think we're creating a headache to go from there into Main Street with a wide street and then go from there backwards. Go back to the other picture, please. Backwards towards where we're standing and go from there forward with only half a street. And then next picture, please. 2 further down, one more. This is a picture taken from far away from the triangle. I'm standing at the edge of Roundhouse Street, right behind the half of the street that we're proposing to build. And the other half is the fence that it seems to me that fence was redone this year. It doesn't seem like a good faith gesture on the Wolf Cattle Company, because they're fully aware that we are in this process of building this housing development. We want to do something there, and yet they smack and put a brand new fence there also across the triangle that goes all the way out to County Road 5. So that seems to be a demonstrative show of intent, at least as I interpret it. So I think we may be barking up the wrong tree, thinking that the town will get anywhere with that. But I wish you the best in your negotiations with the Wolf Cattle Company, because you're going to need it. Because I don't think they're easy that I know of. So anyway, those are the two properties that I want to encourage you to do something with and about through any means possible, because I think that would be a nice legacy for the next 20 years, having good wide streets everywhere and pedestrian access for our children. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Kunal.
Thank you.
We have a hand raised from Jack Butcherselli.
Okay, Jack, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm here to support Kuno's approach to this, and I really want to speak about the pedestrian access between River Park and the high school. I'm the president of the homeowners association there at River Park, and we've been talking with all the property owners there to try to either buy a piece of property or purchase an easement, and we've been unsuccessful over the last 3 or 4 years. But really what I want to speak to is what Mayor Clark said about how the concern of condemnation would be expensive. I think that we would be condemning a pedestrian easement on top of a sewer easement. So it should be almost no diminution in value. The value of an easement on top of an easement would be very minor as opposed to an easement across a developable lot. You would be condemning something that has no other use than to run a sewer line. So you wouldn't lose the ability to be the house. It wouldn't encumber anybody's lot any further. So I think the value that would be in question is nowhere near as high as one might think. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. That's a good point.
Is that something that, Preston, we could have staff look into? Because it is a natural flow of humans. Ask people to go all the way down to Green Street and back up and around to walk to the high school from River Park is a somewhat absurd ask.
Yeah, we can absolutely look into that, and I'd love Bo to chime in with what he knows. But what I know about the eminent domain process in the state of Colorado is that it's cumbersome, lengthy, and pricey, no matter what you're looking to condemn. So I've never gone through it myself. I don't know if Bo has, but Bo, what do you have to add?
So yeah, let me just kind of clarify, because the concepts have been used interchangeably, and I think that they're somewhat interchangeable in terms of condemnation versus eminent domain. Condemnation is the taking of private property by a municipality or governmental entity for use by that governmental entity. So taking of property by the town from a private citizen for use by the town. Eminent domain is the taking of private property from a private citizen that is then used for a public benefit. So it may subsequently be transferred to a different private party or a public entity, but maybe not the town. So eminent domain would be the concept if the town went through the takings process and then thereafter, say, had the River Park Homeowners Association own and maintain a trail easement versus condemnation, the town would take it and subsequently own that property. Other than that, the processes are relatively simpler. It's grounded in the Colorado Constitution and clearly recognized with our home rule charter that the town has the ability to pursue either condemnation or eminent domain. In 2012, the town filed a complaint for condemnation. And thereafter, we reached an arrangement with the landowner.
Muted there, Bo, somehow.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Okay, so the town, I think it was around 2012, filed a complaint for condemnation, and then Shortly thereafter, we reached an arrangement with the landowner. Basically came down to value of the property. So we didn't go through the formal condemnation process. To your point, Preston, I don't know. I mean, the town's authority is clearly grounded and recognized. It's a battle over value of the taking. So concepts like whether or not the town views property as putting an ag land value, a price per acre, which would equate to rural agricultural land versus a landowner saying, well, you're using it and its highest and best use would be for commercial purposes. So typically it's not necessarily a challenge of the town's right to proceed with condemnation and or eminent domain, because those are clearly recognized, but it's a dispute over value.
Thanks, Bo. That's good summation. Sounds to me like we should direct staff to look into possibility of acquiring that pedestrian easement across the existing sewer easement, utility easement that's limited to just sewer. I wish I could remember why we only allowed sewer in that easement, but it doesn't really matter at this point. And see if maybe there's a possibility that because it's an easement, as Jack Petroselli said, that it might be, its value might be different. I'm guessing that when it comes down to something like condemnation, there'd be a big dispute about whether it has value or not, or what the value is. But all we can do is start the discussion and find out, right?
That's right. Now, the one thing that I will say is that you do need to start with a good faith offer. So it would be good to get background information and then proceed with an offer. And then to the extent that that is rejected, you can proceed with condemnation and or eminent domain. So.
Okay.
So I have a fair amount of history with this situation because the social trail used to go right through my lot before I built. And so like Mercury, the water flowed around me once I built on both sides, and I had to fence off the lot that I sold. And then it flowed onto Sneed's lot. And I spoke with him when he was building Great Wall of China there not too recently. And Bo, let me know if I need to recuse myself from this discussion or not, as it affects me as well, or not directly.
So I think just putting that on the record, Terry, is completely adequate because it doesn't appear that we're making any sort of decision tonight. That being said, to the extent that there is a decision making and you feel like based on your proximity to the property at issue, if that's a conflict, you would need to recuse yourself then.
So one of the issues came up in talking to him recently while he was building that fence is that he believes that driveway is a private driveway. And even though there's an easement that goes through it, that he has control over the use of that driveway. So it may be more complicated than just extending the utility easement that goes underneath the driveway, because the driveway is shared by him, Ashley Garrett, the neighbor, and the two lots that also access it. So I just want to throw that out there as a possible complication to this approach. One of the other approaches that was brought up was purchasing the lot. And I talked to Jack, may still be on the line. I talked to Jack about possibly selling to the HOA, to the other lot that I had, or a portion of it, and maybe cutting in thirds. And my neighbors over here in the corners were interested, and the corporals were interested in purchasing a piece of that. I'd purchase a piece of it, and we'd sell the middle strip to the HOA, the school, or the town, or a combination of all three, to create a small little green belt with a path. That same concept could happen to this lot, since it is the most direct path from the existing pedestrian easement that I think is owned by the HOA. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, the one that's next to Tom's house, which is a natural flow through the green space. Another approach would be to purchase the lot, create a permanent, like a split rail fence, a cattle chute, if you will, a pathway through there. Should that approach be viable and he's interested in selling it, I'd be interested in purchasing a piece of it to lower the cost to the town, the HOA, or the school. But I also think it's worth considering going in partnership with the HOA and the school in this process, because all three of those entities have a stake in this, have a vested interest in this.
I agree. Thank you, Terry. That's really helpful, and I think that's a great place to start. He would be buying a lot from David Sneed.
Yeah, which he doesn't, every time I approach him with that idea as the Kuno, he totally rejects the idea. When I mentioned it, he goes, oh yeah, I wouldn't sell for less than $500,000. It's like, okay, whatever. But that's still a possibility, and with a reasonable offer and with multiple entities looking to pay for the lot, myself included, I'd buy 10 or 15 feet of it just to extend my property line. But that might lower the cost to the other entities. But that's, I'm just throwing that out there as another alternative approach.
I think, I think we all agree that that is a clear pedestrian moving place. I think maybe we're at the point where we need to let staff look into it. Kuno pointed out that it is very explicit in the easement language that it cannot be used for a pedestrian pathway now. So I think that's kind of where, we need Bo and Kristen and people to look into it. But yeah, Kuno, you were absolutely right when you said we're talking about green things and we're not facilitating pedestrian traffic. And you're absolutely right.
And to Kuno's point, it's used by more than just the school kids. It's used by most of the community on bicycles. And people
Right.
walking.
Right. Tom?
Yeah, I got a couple of comments. One is, I'm not familiar with right-of-way law here. I'm very familiar with it in Virginia. How many years did people freely go through there before that was blocked?
I think it's longer in Colorado than,
Yeah.
because if it had been Terry's property, we could have probably.
You have to, once a year, you have to put a sign up, no trespassing. And it varies from state to state, but, that's the law in a lot of states.
And the Snead is aware of that, which is why he recently redid his
After
signs.
now, but how many years did he allow people to go free?
No, they used to go
In
through
Virginia,
Terry's
it's
property.
20 years, and after that,
Oh, oh, sorry. Did you have more to ask?
Yeah,
Did
so
you
I
have
mean, I
Hold on a second.
it sounds like there's a potential or crafting an argument there that there'd be adverse possession. I don't think that would work just from a number of different factors. One of which is it's 18 years open and hostile use. I don't know that we would meet that burden either from the time frame or given the fact that there wouldn't be necessarily one plaintiff in terms of it's not, a neighbor that has continued to use that property, but the town, the collective citizens of the town itself.
Yeah, okay, and then I was just gonna comment, I've had a lot of experience with condemnation right away. Again, it's in Virginia, not here. But one of the things that was consistent, because I know Preston was talking about a long, complicated thing, and maybe it is here in this state, but it wasn't near as difficult there. As Bo had said, first of all, you got to pay attention to highest and best use, get a good certified appraiser, residential in general. So you're solid on your comps and all that. And then you're in real good shape because there's never an issue, as Bo said, with whether or not the town can do it. They've got the right to condemnation, just like I did with the U.S. Forest Service. We actually had attorneys, believe it or not, that would try to convince their client that they could beat this, of course they can't. But one of the things that the last thing I want to mention is that what happened consistently with us is it never went to court. The judges just don't want to fool with something. That mind, they say, in my case, it was the U.S. attorney, you settle it with his lawyer, and get it done.
Get it done.
And I'm not interested in looking at this property and having it go to court.
Right. And as Bo said, what it all is going to boil down to is value and negotiating what's worth. So I think we clearly have direction for staff to look into it, try and see if we can't make something happen. I agree with Kuno, it'd be nice to get it done by fall before school starts. Not sure whether the wheels of justice and all that don't necessarily move fast, but we can certainly do our best. And unless there's more on that particular question, I would just like to quickly address the Laura Street, half street question and say that obviously there was never any intention for it to remain a half street forever. It was a temporary solution in order for the project to move forward.
I understand that, but I think, my opinion is that a temporary solution is adequate.
But
That's what I was presenting.
you're entitled to that opinion. Sometimes we have to do things a little differently in order to get things done. So, and as you mentioned, there's another item on the agenda that's going to discuss this item, I believe. So, stay tuned. We certainly agree with you 1,000% that full right of way needs to be acquired and developed as ASAP. But the world is a complicated place and it might not happen as fast as you want it to. But I think there's no question it will happen.
Maybe it's only as complicated as we make it.
Well, so is our housing situation. So we're balancing the two issues.
Yeah, exactly. So appreciate your point, Kuno, and your passion for these things. Please don't get the wrong idea there. We value your opinion.
I'll come back if nothing happens.
I know you will. I know you will. That's good. Anything else on this side?
So Mayor, if I think staff or Bo, I think we have the direction we need. Jack Petroselli has his hand up.
Jack, you got some to add?
Yeah, I want to speak to the value here. I think that we're overestimating the value of this easement. One thing that hasn't been discussed is not only are we talking about a pedestrian easement on top of a sewer easement, we're talking about a pedestrian easement on top of an emergency access easement that's already been approved for the future development of that bench up there. So that we're talking about putting an easement on top of two other easements. So I could argue there's little or no value in the condemnation process.
Hopefully, an appraiser agrees.
Yeah, that what Beth just said, I agree with it. We have to hope an appraiser agrees with that. And that's
I think it sounds great. I just want.
all right.
If I just add one last thing, the comments I made about eminent were specific to eminent domain. I didn't realize it was an entirely separate condemnation process, which is I learn something every day. So,
Right.
There you go.
I wanted to add one more thing to the record. Kuno brought up two places, and I know this might be into the realm of planning for the whole town, but are there other places that if we're going to be having staff look into this, are there other access points in town that need to be explored, looked into as well? At least put a laundry list together of
On the
river
cut
trail.
What's that?
The river trail up here.
I mean, I think this is part of, I actually had someone bring this up to me recently, that I know at one point there was discussion about the Parks Committee developing a trail map in Ridgway. And this feels like that intersection between parks and sustainability about pedestrian movement through Ridgway kind of in.
And there is a trail map.
Okay.
Need to update it.
Exactly.
Make sure it's current. And
So,
yeah, there are other places. And I can have a chat with Preston about making sure he's up to speed on. I'd say the main one is the bit of trail along the river that people use that cuts across the corner of Charlie Ergen's property and until and Paul's gives us an easement for his portion of that. Charlie Ergen isn't interested in helping us with his portion. So that's been a long-standing discussion point that we've been trying to work out. And as I said before, sometimes these things take a lot longer than usually. The point's well taken, and I think I know Preston will make sure if he isn't already, he's aware of this trails map that exists and takes a look at that and sees what else we should be trying to get fixed while we can. Okay, anything else on this item? Thanks, Kuno.
Thank you.
I'm going to move us on to policy matters. Item number 8, resolution number 22-07, supporting the multimodal transportation and Mitigation Options Fund grant application and match commitment for the creation of a regional transportation service between the city of Montrose, town of Ridgway, and city of Uray. Preston.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This one's a bit out of left field, given that it's transpired in a relatively short amount of time, but all good efforts, absolutely. So memo I think has a pretty good background. Hopefully you've had a chance to read through it, but I'll go through it here. So everyone's aware. The action before you is a resolution supported that's needed for the grant application to support the grant application that has already been submitted to CDOT's MMOF program. The request is for funding to create a regional transportation service between Montrose, Ridgway, and Uray. It's a project that has been on the RTP for a while now. I shouldn't say a while, but for several years at least. Total estimated cost of the project over a 3-year period is just north of $710,000 based on some pretty conservative assumptions that have been worked into that application. The amount being requested of CDOT or their MMOF program is $533,091. That requires a 25% match rate pulled together by the town of Ridgway, the city of Uray, and Uray County. And that's over 3 years. So the estimated contribution from the town, city, and county over that 3 years is $59,000, almost $60,000 each. Again, that's $60,000 over 3 years. The estimated contribution from each entity, town, city, and county in the first year is $28,000. For years 2 and 3, just north of $15,000. All Points Transit has been at the table. They've been great to work with. They've been identified as being able to provide this service based on a contract at a cost of $5 per round trip for ridership. They've also agreed to be the program manager and fiscal agent of this grant, which was great news for the city of Uray. They've done a tremendous job spearheading the grant application. I will be there too to supplement the presentation, but they will be at the GBTPR meeting tomorrow to present the application where it will be essentially decided on. So this is timely. If you all were to approve the resolution, I would get it signed and sent over to Michelle Haynes with Region 10 immediately. So just some background there. The full cost estimate, project implementation schedule, and then more information about the needs and project benefits are included in the packet. The application's there, the narrative, the whole nine. On the July 1st, we created and issued a survey very similar to the one Uray did in May, I think it was, to help determine the need for workforce transportation. I think as of Friday, we had, remember what was in the packet, 41 or 42 responses. As of this morning at 10 a.m., we had 51 responses, which I think is tremendous. I think the city, I don't want to misspeak, but the city only left their survey open for a couple days, something like that. And I think we got like 10 responses. Don't quote me on that. It wasn't many, but I think the fact that we got 51 in a relatively short amount of time speaks volumes. Of the responders, 82% stated their company would benefit from having a public transit option for their employees and customers. Almost 77% indicated that a public transportation option between Ridgway and Montrose, or Ridgway and Uray, or even Uray and Montrose, would expand their options to hire employees and help alleviate staffing issues. And just nearly 57% of respondents stated a public transit option would increase the hours and days they were able to serve customers. I already mentioned that the application is scheduled to be presented tomorrow. In the end, a service just like this has been identified as a need and an overall desire, I think, for some time. And the resolution that is before you expresses a commitment to the project and agrees to split the match requirement with the other jurisdictions. But I got to know, because I know if I don't, Bo would, it would be subject to annual appropriation. So I've got to go through the budget cycle each year and budget for it accordingly. So, and that's a taper requirement. So I think that's all I got.
Great presentation. Preston and I've sat in on a couple of meetings with the city of Ridgway to talk about this in the last couple of weeks. So a week and a half. Anybody here have any questions?
Question. The seating capacity, currently, like, I've been trying to figure it out through this, but six passenger van, is that what they're planning?
I thought it was bigger than that.
I think the budget was assuming they had 6 passengers,
That's-
not that the
yeah,
van could accommodate 6. That was like
That's
the
correct.
budgetary assumption.
I read 9 somewhere.
9.
So is it a van or is it a shuttle? That's the part I couldn't quite figure out.
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is that, that may meet current needs, but we've got multiple developments going in that are gonna have need for more round trip capacity. And I'm wondering if, and this may be out of the scope of what we have the ability to weigh in on today, because it may be going back to the design of the project. But, would we be willing to pay more if the capacity of the van was greater? And 3 round trips, so what was it? I saw that somewhere near the list of, it was,
Well, that was
there
my
was
question.
5 round trips in the summer and 3 in the winter. If the major use of it, I would think would be the employment car commuting, which is going to happen in the morning and the evening. And I don't know if 9 passengers, in other words, I'm wondering if we're getting enough bang for the buck through our contribution. Should it be a higher seating capacity before we commit to it, or is it adjustable? Is it a program that we're investing in, or is it a vehicle? Such that could the vehicle expand as the need expanded and then our contribution expands over time?
That's a great question. It's a pilot program, and you run the risk of perhaps it being so successful you can't accommodate everyone, right? But those are some great questions. I've pulled up the narrative or the cost estimate. It's attachment B. It's an ADA accessible van. So no further details, and I don't recall based on those meetings, John, but how many seats the van has. But I know the city, there were a couple of council members, at least one in particular, it was in the newspaper, had a remark about that very thing. Should we be thinking bigger than just a van?
Taking school kids in the summer.
I mean, if we're talking Montrose, we have kids who come down to Ridgway to come to school from Montrose, or come to Ridgway to hop the bus to go to Montrose.
Yeah, I guess
I mean-
what I would say is that if what this is designed to do is as Preston said, it's a pilot program. We're hoping that it's successful, but you need to scale it appropriately at the beginning to make sure we don't overcommit or
It's a waste of resources.
but and if it's as successful as I think we all imagine it could or would be, then there's options to buy the van to work with all points and find way. I mean, if there's more need, I have no doubt that all points will recognize that because it's a revenue source for them.
What a problem to have.
Right,
Yeah.
and we may not want to see this as a waste, right? If it's really, really useful, can we run the shuttle at peak commuter hours, but utilize this van and, do a midday run to encourage more use for people who don't use. So I think John's right that we're talking about an entry point. But yeah, I think all points could be creative with the resources that we're purchasing with this grant.
Clearly, I see the need is increasing over time, especially with the current developments that we've already approved. Just the capacity of people that are going to need to commute. And also back to the Eco Action Partners cap, reducing the impact on transportation.
Right.
More
Yeah,
public
fits right
transportation.
into the goals for sure.
Is there anything clearly stated in here about how many times this is gonna run? I see service hours in winter and in summer.
I saw 3 in the
Yeah, 5
winter and
trips.
5 in the summer.
Yeah, 5 round trips during the summer, 3 in the winter. So, and that's based on the 6-month division a year. And then it goes into more detail about the service hours below. But I think it's very general, right?
And I think it bears pointing out that these numbers came from all points. They came from their experience as a transportation company, and that was their estimate as a good start. And again, I think if it's just hugely successful, all of a sudden we're over capacity and there aren't enough trips, I think there's plenty of opportunity to grow the program.
Absolutely. I just want to say one more thing. My major, I shouldn't call it a concern, reservation, I guess, about this was making sure the assumptions are as conservative as possible so we get more realistic contribution estimates. Because if none of this comes to fruition, if it's not as successful as we're hoping it would be, then the way I see it, everyone's contribution goes up a little bit, but it's the opportunity cost there.
So to be clear, it's a 3-year commitment right now.
If awarded the grant, it's a commitment subject to annual appropriation. And then I just want to give a shout out to Sarah. What's Sarah's last name of all points? Is it Curtis?
I think so.
Tremendous job trying to get all this together. But even bigger kudos to Silas Clark with the city. He did a good job getting this together in a short amount of time. Dowdy's watching. Great job, Silas. He'll be there tomorrow to kind of spearhead the presentation.
Great.
So one more quick question. You said you have to go through appropriations, and this wouldn't start until next year?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
great question. 2023.
We
is,
budget for it.
we would budget for it accordingly.
2023.
Yeah, in the upcoming fall budget cycle for 2023 to start in, I think, April, spring, I guess.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, number one, I think it's a great idea. But two, I think if you surveyed employers in the area, a lot of employers would pay for those round trip passes for their employees coming in. You might have a good sense of how many employers would be willing to do that to help people who are commuting, paying the high gas premiums, et cetera.
That's a good point. That wasn't a question on our survey, but it would have been
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
As a point of reference, Senegal Power, we own a 9-person shuttle van that we run for Montrose every day just for our employees. There were other options, cut down on your electric bill.
But yeah, for you guys, for businesses to be able to work with All Points to purchase those passes for employees would be a really, really good idea that kind of comes into the administration post awarding of the grant.
Thanks, Adam. Anybody on Zoom having questions or comments about this? I think it really does fit in right in the theme of tonight, started by the Eco Action report. We're trying to do as much as we can to make an impact in our GHG impact and our goals. So this fits right into that. I don't see any hands up. Any other comments here?
A question, with you guys attending the meetings, have they seen similar programs, comps elsewhere in Colorado, elsewhere in the country?
Oh, and putting
Big
it
model after.
together.
Yeah.
I'm not recalling off the top of my head. I imagine with Sarah from All Points Transit being there that she was able to pull from other models that she's been involved with there at All Points Transit, but I don't recall anyone saying anything about, Eagle County or over on the front page. That's a great question. You can ask Sarah.
Well, I'll move to adopt resolution number 2207, supporting the MMOF grant application and MAPS commitment for the creation of a regional transportation service between the city of Montrose, town of Ridgway, and the city of Ridgway.
I'll second that.
Okay, got in under the gun on that second. Motion's been made and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Council members Enix,
Aye.
Bramley,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Skylar,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Aye. Great, passes unanimously. Thank you. That takes us to item number 9, discussion and direction regarding HB 22-1117, use of local lodging taxes. Preston.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this spring, Governor Polis signed a bill. It's HB 22-1117 into law concerning the use of revenue from a local tax on lodging. The bill allows some level of county lodging taxes to be used to help create affordable housing funds. There's several categories you can be earmarked for, but that's the major one. The bill is specific to counties and marketing districts and allows for expenditures with voter approval on items such as I was getting at, housing, childcare, infrastructure improvements, if the project enhances the visitor and overall community experience. Staff, we thought that it'd be worthwhile for you all to have a conversation about the town's existing lodging tax and the idea of submitting potentially a ballot question to the electorate modifying how the proceeds are earmarked from that tax. It's been a goal of the town council for some time to figure out a dedicated revenue source for affordable housing. Again, that bill was only specific to counties and marketing districts. But as a home rule municipality, we have we have our own set of regs to adhere to. So Bo may want to chime in with his 2 cents on this, but again, really wanted to bring it up for conversation, given that it's been at the forefront through the legislative session.
No, that great job, Preston. I don't know that I have a ton to add with respect to this House bill. Pretty specific, but that being said, certainly we could draft our own ballot question to the extent that that's something that you'd want to proceed with. If you're looking at the November general election, at the very least tonight, you would need to proceed with a notice of intent to file a question with the Uray County Clerk and Recorder's Office, and you'd have to set the ballot question before the end of August in order to meet the deadlines for the November regular election.
So this would be, so currently we give 70% of that tax. So this would be allotting either 30 or resetting that percentage.
Great question.
Could be either.
Either way.
Okay.
And I assume that's why you guys are here tonight. The initial thought was we just take that 30% that the town gets and put all of that towards housing via this ballot question. I think it bears discussing with you guys whether or not you could imagine, given the fact that we probably don't need to market as much as we have in the past anymore. We've been discovered, we're sort of blowing up. Believe me, the last thing I want to do is take away from the good work you guys are doing and your ability to hire the staff you do with your job, Ash, and the visitor center organizer and all that. I mean, I want to make sure I'm not suggesting that we definitely do that. I just like to have the discussion about maybe you guys looking at your budget and seeing whether you could make do with just slightly less so that more could go towards housing. That discussion doesn't have to take place tonight. All we really need to do is let the county clerk know that we intend to put a question on the ballot about this, and then the details can be worked out between now and sometime in August. But to answer your question, that's the way I see it. Very least, I think I have no doubt that there's probably consensus here to put all 30% that we're currently obtaining towards this. And then it's just a matter of discussing whether there's some tweaking we could do to make it a little bit more.
Do we have any idea what those numbers are? What was 30% last year?
You guys know what 70% was.
For last year,
Yeah.
it was just under 100,000. 70% of the whole thing. 70%.
Your 70% was just
70%.
just under or just over?
Under.
Just under.
Yes.
So we're talking a total pot of 143,000.
Based on that,
Yeah.
that 95.
I just based on 100 just because it would be.
Okay.
I'm pulling up the budget document to see what the projected year end was and then what we projected for 2022. Hang on one second.
And it bears having a discussion about, those projections, given the gas prices, inflation and all that, the potential for recession, and we're probably looking at pretty serious potential for a downturn in our lodging tax. who knows, it's a crystal ball kind of thing, but if and when, maybe when the economy recovers, I have no doubt that that's going to keep going up. Like I say, we've been discovered. But there's a lot of factors involved. Polly, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I see that it is a $2 per room per night, up to 3.5% per room per night. Is that specifically for hotels, or do we take into account Airbnbs, VRBOs, short-term lodging as well?
STRs pay that as well. Yep.
I mean, the benefit of this approach, whether we reallocate or just tag the 30% for housing, is that this is not an additional tax. So it would be, I think, a reasonable lift to ask voters. It shy of like wiping out, I'm not suggesting we do, but shy of, wiping out the chamber. We're talking about a sum which is about equal to what we've set aside the last couple of years for affordable housing. And I know we had talked about it during our budgeting cycle last year, trying to have a workshop and brainstorming kind of the overall picture ideas. So this could be a piece of the puzzle, in my opinion, but it's certainly not, the be all end all of our funding stream, which means that we maybe don't need to be overly aggressive in changing that percentage if we did.
Do we have a dedicated use of money assigned for affordable housing?
The history of the thing is that, and Ridgway took a lot, the town of Ridgway government took a lot of heat for this over the years, but long ago, when I was on planning commission in the 90s, there was a town councilor named Marcus Wilson, who still lives here at Dallas Meadows. He used to live in where the Church of San Juan's is now. He put forward the idea that different than most communities, we should put at least a portion, and originally it was 50-50. 50% of the lodging tax went to improvements for the residents of the town. Streets, sidewalks, specifically I think it talked about sidewalks and landscaping. With the idea that the impact of tourism on the residents of the town is not insignificant, and it makes sense to use some of that money to improve town for the residents. That we took a lot of heat for that over the years, and then it eventually evolved to this 70-30 split. That 30, I believe, is still earmarked for, I don't know how it's worded, but something like,
It
or
was
is it not
never earmarked for marketing originally.
no,
but there's.
that's what I'm saying. That's
Oh,
what I'm
okay.
saying.
It was 70-30, 30% was for plantings in the park. Is how old it was. We didn't have any plants in the park. And then 70 was for infrastructure.
Okay, and then did it evolve to at one point to 50-50 and then to the current 70-30? I can't
remember that.
But it's been as it is now for at
It
least.
it didn't start at 70%. I know that, but I don't remember it being.
Okay. So that 30 is supposed to be used. The remainder is supposed to be used for expenses attributable to tourism growth. So.
Pretty vague, but that's the idea, and that's where that came from. So and I don't know that we're using. I think it just goes in the general fund, and I'm not sure if it's being earmarked for anything.
I think that's fair to
But
say.
in some ways, it certainly does. We're funding all the things that we fund.
We certainly do a lot of stuff.
You can make a case for sure.
Yeah.
And you may know, like the actuals or close to actuals, but estimated year end as of December, when the budget was approved, was 130. So, and then 95,000 was what we budgeted for or projected in 2022. So a little more conservative amount.
But we always budget conservatively. So.
I have a question.
Ash.
For the ballot question, is it for the whole 100% of the lot tax or just the 30% that town allocates?
That's what we're discussing.
Okay.
What our original thought is to just for just the 30% the town is retaining. And like I said, I'm just interested in having a discussion with you guys, having you go to your board and look at your budget and say, do we need to be spending as much on like the visitor guide and things like that? And if you are, I'm I'm totally fine with that. I just,
Director salaries.
it's just, it's just a discussion we're having, right? It's for a good cause. Yeah,
I think it's important to know, particularly compared to some of our neighboring communities, our budgets are pimple compared to URay.
Understood.
Right. We do a lot with a little. And I think that we're new in our positions this year, and I think just to follow up a little bit on your comment, in the summer, we don't need to do any marketing, but the winter, everyone needs help in the winter. So we're working on ideas to help grow business for the whole community in the winter. And it's not going to happen overnight, but hopefully we're going to do some things that work, some things won't work. You know, like Wall Night, we're working on expanding on that. But also, the housing issue is an issue for all the businesses in the area. So if we could come to the table and help in that process and participate, it's an interest for everyone.
and that's all I'm suggesting, honestly, is just, you guys take a look at your budget and I believe me, I totally get that the city of Uray and Telluride is a whole other ballgame altogether. City of Uray's been a very active tourist town since the 50s. And Ridgway was never a tourist town until about 10 years ago. So I get that your budget is minuscule compared to neighboring communities and similar size. So we totally respect that and understand and just think it's worth having a discussion.
So timing wise, do we have to know a percentage today that we have to ask for, or just tell the clerk that we would like
intend to do it?
and then by the end of August, we would have to have those percentages worked out?
What's the date again, Bo? It's not the end of August, or is it?
It is, I think it is the end of
I think it's the first, it would be, by the end of August. I think it's the 1st or 2nd of September that we have to have our ballot questions set.
So we have theoretically till the end of August to come up with a word. So,
well, I mean, I think we should certainly ask for at least the 30% to be earmarked. I would be interested in looking at, a percentage maybe more towards housing, because like you said, that is a boon to businesses as well. I don't know where I fall and what that number should be, but I do think asking the voters to at least do the 30% makes a ton of sense.
I mean, to me, even an additional 5%, every percent additional is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out. And Preston, I'm not sure how we should proceed. I think there's no doubt there's consensus that we want to let the clerk know, that the county clerk know that we want to put a ballot question on the ballot for November. And then as far as whether you guys want to go back to your board and have a discussion and then get with Preston or.
Let me just suggest real quick. So I think we have a consensus here to get a notice of intent drafted and issued. Just talking with Ashley, I think we're planning for next council meeting, August 10th, for you all to come in and do your biannual report, the Chamber's biannual report. So I think that'd be a perfect opportunity for you all to come back and piggyback on that, to have a subsequent conversation to this. Bo and I can start crafting some language to put up here, and we can start massaging it collectively, right? So we have plenty of time now that it seems like everyone was nodding, have a consensus on just getting word to the county that we want to participate.
Great.
Anyway, sorry.
I would just say, if you 5 or 10% out of that number, you took about $10,000. I don't know what we would spend that on as relates to housing, but we have had some preliminary conversations about housing, and that 5 to 10%, maybe it's already to talk about housing, to participate in whatever, discussions you're having. And I think the value, there's a value here versus, I don't know what you spend that $5,000 to $10,000 on for housing otherwise. So, take that out of the budget from us.
Just so you know, historically, we've done things like help offset tap fees for affordable housing developments.
We have some commitments with the Housing Trust.
Yep, helping fund the housing trust,
We
so
have some
trying to think what
commitments
else.
with them that would go to affordable housing. We know that there's another, Telluride Foundation is gonna come to us and ask us for some sort of donations as we get them going with the Yellow Brick Lane. We've also got another habitat coming in, so it's these kinds of things where there's quite a few actually coming in, and so to have an identified source would be an awesome thing. But those are the things we have on the table today.
I respect all those things and doing all those, that's all good, but it'd be taking blood from a stone here. Because to take that out of our budget, we'd have to shrink somewhere else, whether it's staffing the visitor center.
Understood, and that's where we need to sit down and have these discussions. We don't need to work that out tonight, but that's.
Yeah, we totally get it.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind, I mean, tons I could talk about, that we do that's information related rather than marketing. But the Heritage Park and Visitor Center project, I mean, that's gonna be an expensive project. And if we have less money to contribute to that, you know, because we have less lot funds, that will impact it as well.
That's a good point. It's a very good point. Well, we just appreciate you being here. I think we're all understanding where we're coming from and discussion we had. Kuno.
Yeah, and listening to you guys discussing all these things and always bringing up housing, I wonder if it would be time for the council to consider real estate transfer tax.
We
Because
can't.
that creates a lot of money.
It's not allowed. Tabor made that illegal, or we would have done it.
Now, one thing that we've talked about in budgeting, we haven't ever had a chance to have a workshop about. Crested Butte tried to do a vacant home tax. I mean, there are other options. That was why Kuno and I started with, this isn't the end, this is just a portion.
I didn't know it was.
I'm definitely talking with people about some sort of creative way to tax the investment real estate market. People who are just snapping up properties.
It's crazy.
And that's what, but we can't do a real estate transfer tax because Tabor made that.
The fairgrounds, I think, is a wonderful area that feels underutilized in our community, and just wondering if anyone's ever explored doing affordable housing somewhere on the fairgrounds.
I can only say, I mean, not this, before I was on council, I've had conversations about it being underutilized, both for events, for housing, things that would be optional. They're talking to different commissioners, and that's as far as I've ever gone with it. But I don't know the context and their interests. Do you guys have a relationship with them as well?
Well, I mean, I've worked with Aaron periodically, but I know there's a relationship between the county and the town as it relates to the fairground, but I know overall Ridgway County's having an issue with housing, and there's lots of land there, and maybe there's some potential solution there that could be low impact for community, that, you know, we could build some housing there and that wouldn't interfere with anything else.
It's an interesting thought that probably the south end would be the only place that something like that could happen, but it's a possibility. And we've looked at a lot of us have talked for years about the south end of the athletic fields next to Solar Ranch. There's some acreage there that could potentially.
Big solar array is gonna go.
What's that?
Where the big solar array is gonna go.
Is that where the big solar array is going to go? You've already got that marked out. Good to know. Well, this has been a good discussion. Again, thank you guys for being here. I think we're just looking at anything we can, and obviously the state has come up with this new state statute to try and come up with as many different ways to try and fund affordable housing as possible. So, and even if, you know, assuming that we stick with just reallocating our 30%, that's still going to make a dent over time, especially if we don't go into a complete recession. But this is one of those stay tuned things we'll talk about next month and come up with a
If I may,
strategy.
You did a good job, sorry. Bo, do you think we need a formal motion on this, or is direction good enough?
If we could just get a motion to notify the Uray County Clerk and Recorder's Office that we intend to proceed with a ballot question, I think that would be clean.
Somebody can say so moved.
So moved.
Second,
Motion's made and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmembers Ennis,
Aye.
Grambling,
Aye.
Bacon,
aye.
Schuyler,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Aye.
Thanks. I apologize. I may have jumped the gun. Did anybody else have, like, on Zoom, have anything you wanted to add? Don't want to leave anybody feeling like they didn't get to say their piece. Looks like we're okay. Okay, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Before we move on to the next 10 items, if I give you an interesting update regarding the Yellow Brick Lane project. I met with Governor Bowles yesterday in Norwood on the Norwood project. He came out to celebrate that project for a number of reasons, one of which was, I don't want to go into great detail, the fact that we're compartmentalizing solar and air source heat pumps to lower the electric bill through an on-bill financing, on-bill repayment through San Miguel Power. It keeps the capital cost out of the mortgage so that the homes remain affordable, and then their electric bills become affordable through solar offset through net metering and the use of high efficiency heat pumps, because the Fading West, the company that's the manufacturer of the homes, only incorporated electric baseboard. It wasn't baseboard, they're called code heaters. It's electric radiant, which would have made an enormously expensive electric bill. The heat pumps not only reduce that significantly, but are also air conditioners. So they get cooling and heating, lowers their electric bill, and then they offset it with a much smaller solar system. The Colorado Clean Energy Fund's coming up with 3% loan for 20 years, will then be paid on the electric bill. So it's a program that we're rolling out, that we're going to roll out eventually to all of our members, that the governor was extremely interested in, came and flew in for a meeting, among other reasons. But I was extremely impressed with Polish. He was sharp. He knew he was well prepared. He talked about net zero, like the initiative we're looking at for broader things, but it's likely that the Yellow Brick Lane will probably be net zero, all electric net zero, include solar and air source heat pumps.
Awesome.
All to the issues brought up by the county.
Yeah.
So very pretty exciting that he flew to our little neck of the woods. Maybe we get him to come for our meeting.
Yeah, it's probably not till next spring. Thanks for that update, Jerry. That's awesome. That brings us to item number 10, confirmation or amendment of emergency restrictions promulgated by the town manager on burning and fires within the town of Ridgway. We've both instituted and then rescinded fire restrictions since our last meeting.
It's our last meeting. Yeah. So,
Do we have to do anything? Is it just nullify itself?
We have to ratify what was done.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So.
And I assume we just need a quick motion to ratify the action that the town manager took in the last month.
I think that's advice.
I move to confirm the emergency restrictions on burning fires within the town of Ridgway, as well as the rescission of emergency restrictions on burning and fires within the town of Ridgway.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ennis,
Aye.
Grambling,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Schuyler,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Takes us to item number 11. It's another ratification. We were requested to submit a letter of support for Ice Parks funding request to the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, which I did with their help pen and got them to it in time for them to submit their funding request. They were very grateful for that. So we just need you to ratify that.
So this is just a letter of support.
Yeah.
Unless anybody has anything to say about it, I'll go ahead and move to approve it.
Second that.
All right, motion made second again. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmembers Ennis,
Sorry, yes.
Bramley,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Skylar.
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Leonard.
Aye. Great, thank you very much. That passes unanimously as well. Brings us to item number 12, consideration of authorizing Mayor Clark to sign a letter of support for the Gunnison Outdoor Resources Protection Act. Preston, I assume you've been in conversation with somebody from Senator Bennett's office about this.
Not yet. We're gonna send it over to them soon, but yeah, this was at the request of Robin Cascade.
Oh, okay, right.
Because the acronym was different last go around, it's GPLI or something, and now there's the actual draft Gunnison Outdoor Resources Protection Act, and I think the letter supports certain additions of areas to the act. Is that right, John?
I believe so. And it's mostly the areas that are actually, a lot of it is outside the Erie County boundaries, but it's areas that a lot of us use regularly because it's accessed from Mountain Pass. So I think Senator Bennett's office has been very, they've been great about recognizing the impact of this on the county and Ridgway in particular. And that's why we're being asked for this letter of support. So does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Zooming through this so fast, I keep forgetting to ask for public comment. Anybody want to weigh in on this? Either we got one person left in the room here. Anybody on Zoom want to weigh in? None, so no one will make a motion.
I move to approve.
I move to approve this letter sent to Senator Bennett.
Second.
Boy, that was like the same.
Ooh, I don't know. Yeah.
We give it to Terry.
First call, we still.
Motion made second. Thanks, Polly. Roll call vote, please.
Council members Bennett,
Aye.
Bramley,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Skylar.
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Leonard.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 13 is discussion regarding setting of a special council meeting. Preston, is this having to do with Gilbert Road? Or
Yes.
Gilbert Lane?
Rural Homes LLC, Gilbert Lane project, they weren't able to get to a point where we could put them before you tonight for their preliminary plat application heard by you all. There's some outstanding planning and engineering items for them to button up and for us to sort through. But as part of that commitment that the town, through you all, expressed however long ago that was, and being attentive to them, they are requesting a special meeting be set based on some of their timelines, especially with Fading West, we just heard about a little bit. And so again, they're requesting a special council meeting, and so I'm trying to follow through with that commitment to see if there's any possibility that the large majority, if not all of you, are able to make something work the week of August 1st is what we'd be looking at for a special meeting. A number of reasons for that. The main one would be, staff just sent a comment letter with a number of comments and revisions for them. They are hoping to have their next submittal to us by Monday, the 18th. And staff will have to work really, really hard and aggressively to meet a special council meeting date, but we can certainly do our best, provided that meeting fall within the week of August 1st. So I don't know if that made sense, but if you all were amenable, we could open our calendars and look at some of those dates that first week, starting with Monday the 1st through, well, no one wants to meet on Fridays, so let's just count that out, but through Thursday the 4th.
I will start by saying I know I'm going to be out of town on vacation, but I can zoom in probably one of those days.
I'm here. On the 3rd.
Third is Wednesday.
Wednesday the 3rd.
prefer Wednesdays.
Wednesday, the 3rd works.
Sounds like that's it.
Okay, Russ, did you say?
Yes, I said that. Very.
Okay, well, I'll let Paul Major and David Bruce know that. Joanne's here, but I'll let TJ know that as well, and
Send out a calendar invite.
we'll get all that sent out, we'll get it posted and proceed accordingly for Wednesday, August 3rd.
Can we, since it's a special meeting, can we do it at 6 instead of 5:30? Just summertime schedule.
Should we use any of that opportunity to further discussion with the chamber? Or is this just a special one subject?
That's a great question. No, it's always been my thought, you know, if you're gonna do a special meeting, might as well kill a couple birds with one stone, you know. I really like that saying, I don't know why I said that. But, that's a good idea. Maybe perhaps we have another conversation with them, or just at least tack on some other items to check off.
At least just have an open flow communication with potentially the chamber, because then we would still have our August meeting, the following week.
Yeah.
Correct. So if we really had to, where they're going to present, right?
They'll present their biannual report on activities undertaken over the last. So yeah, perhaps by then they'll have had time.
It could be an opportunity for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
For all of us.
I'll reach out to Ashley.
Seems like there was another possible thing we could take care of that night. I can't remember what it was.
There might be another potential
Planning issue.
Yeah, but we will see. Okay.
All right, we'll wait to see.
So I will keep you all posted.
Calendar invite for 6 p.m. on August 3rd. Right? Thanks, everybody, for that. That takes us to the new item number 14, discussion of the issues that are arising out of our current serious development pressure backlog. First, I'll let you get started.
Yeah, so it's never really that cool to have to come here and say that there's too much going on, that we're too busy. I'm sitting here to say that. I say that on behalf of our crew, specifically in the land use realm. You know, Joanne's here. You could always get her to chime in if you'd like. I don't want to speak for Joanne, but I know how busy she is day to day, including weekends. TJ and his firm, that goes for them too. TJ's the nicest guy in the world. He would never complain, but I know how under the gun he is with. He has some other clients too, but with all the active development applications we have, and that goes for me as well. There's just a lot going on in such a short amount of time. It's no secret, right? We all know what's going on. So really just wanted to be forthright and have a moment here to let you all know that the pressures we're feeling are significant at the staff level. I know you all as elected officials are feeling that as well. I'm sure you guys get folks coming your way saying, what's that fence over there at the triangle lot? What's going on here? Or what's going on with Yellow Brick Lane? Stuff like that. So it's not lost on me that you guys have questions too.
And those are questions we can answer.
Yeah,
it's all the other stuff.
So anyway, we're feeling stressful and it's not sustainable is what this really was meant. What I was really trying to articulate. It's not sustainable at the current rate. I don't know off the cuff what the mechanisms are to perhaps slow things down. I saw Bo and mute. I know he's gonna opine on some stuff, but again, just wanted to let you all know that we're feeling it for sure. But that's probably not a shocker.
Yeah, and I would just add that Preston and I we always do a get together to review the upcoming agenda the week before the council meeting. And we had a kind of a heart-to-heart about it. Like the day before that morning, I had woken up at about 3 a.m. Couldn't go back to sleep thinking about all that's going on. And he and I get emails all the time from people going, Mayor Clark, we'd like to do a development in your town. Can we sit down and meet with you and talk about? So I mean, even with all the stuff, I sat down and counted up today. There's something like 117 units or something going up right now, or in some point, some part of the process. And that's not even including things like Jack Young's thing over at Lot 3 on the other side of the highway. And I don't even think that counts Joe Nelson's project farther out there. It's just, there's a huge number of units going up, and it seems like a tsunami is kind of following. It's not looking like it's going to let up. And so I again, like Preston said, I'm not sure what we're talking about in terms of trying to put the brakes on, trying to do something about it. I can let Bo lay in on that. I know Preston and I talked about maybe doing an emergency ordinance to extend the time period for review that staff has to review proposed developments, but personally, I'm feeling like maybe we need something even more aggressive than that. So, Bo, do you want to weigh in?
I do.
I'd be happy to. I think Preston really hit upon the concerns that we're going through. We had a really productive, in my opinion, meeting. We have a monthly development meeting, Joanne, Preston, TJ, and I, with respect to just going over all the pending applications that we're going through. And we had a very good meeting on Monday. I think at the very least, we've developed some cleaner guidelines and potential policies that can be adopted at the staff level that will attempt to provide some clarification to the developer applicant. But I think it's with everything, it's a multifaceted approach. So the other thing that we'll be looking at is potentially bringing, as Preston indicated, an emergency ordinance to the council in August that at a minimum would give staff a longer period for review. And then I think coupled with that, we'd also be looking at maybe some areas of potential code cleanup and or additional direction so that we can try to, once the application is in and before the staff, we can try to facilitate it as cleanly as possible. So more so than anything else, and Preston and Joanne, if you feel like I'm not right with this, let me know, is that we just wanted to let the council and frankly the public know that we're feeling a pretty big burden here, and so that we're needing to look at these options, and we will come back to you guys in August. But there's a lot that's coming down the pipeline. Coupled with all of this, I think it's again continued discussions with TJ and his group in terms of, is there additional staffing or support that we could get from them?
I'd like to weigh in on the concern that we began to address in our strategic initiatives, that the Zebra Committee is doing a lot of work. We had a meeting last week to do, look for precedents, doing all the research, eventually coming up with what we're going to roll over to the Sustainability Committee once it's formed and operational, for a series of strategic timeline gates to get to that goal. But my concern with a lot of this new development is without that being in place, and whether we need to accelerate that or not is the question, that we're literally, and pardon the pun, setting in concrete some of these greenhouse gas emissions that are going to result from this massive.
Hi, yes.
But part of the problem is the ones that are in progress. If we've already approved a preliminary plat, those guys are in progress.
Right.
But this same crunch that we're dealing with impedes our ability to do code changes that could affect the developments that are coming. So we can't do that until we can get on top of where we're at.
Right, so put a moratorium.
Amen. Hold on a second. I'll give you an opportunity to speak in a second.
Just to finish my thought.
Please don't interrupt.
The question is, the timeline that the Zebra Committee is looking at recommending the Sustainability Committee for the council was not anticipating such an exponential spike in growth. It was more and so, I always had this anecdotal image of the brown cloud hanging over the Oakapugri in the winter. I mean, just the LA effect or the old Denver effect. But question that I'm posing is, should we look at accelerating recommendations and the mechanisms to achieve that eventual goal? It doesn't affect existing projects.
But we can't put it into practice if the people who need to do the work to create the new codes to require that can't handle the volume that we have now.
So that's, it's chicken and egg issue.
I mean, that's what you brought up right out of the gate, was what are the mechanisms? And that's what I was waiting to hear from Bo, like, I mean, so many communities across the country have navigated this, and some have done some pretty aggressive ones, and it's ended in legal quagmires, also in misdirections of long-term planning.
It's also resulted in precedent. So the fact is, it has gone through a lot of, that's one of the things we're looking at is legal precedent. For example, requiring all electric and banning natural gas in new developments. That's a step towards net zero, but it's still, it requires code changes. There's a whole thing involved, but certain timeline is what I'm getting at. How you get to these things are the logistic issues, but it's the timeline. Should that be accelerated? Is what I'm proposing.
But what you're bringing up right now, Preston, is specifically to the human capacity within staff, right? In terms of navigating, it's you're not vocalizing. You're vocalizing how to make it more sustainable here to accommodate or not accommodate the amount of applications that are coming in the door.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not necessarily going through the code process and the ordinance process at this point to calibrate that either to energy consumption or to water use projections or infrastructure. I mean, getting to that is even more complicated. We understand that.
That's all well said. You know what, right? I guess the focus of my remarks was, the staffing standpoint to accommodate everything. I hear what you're saying. That's great. That makes a great point. It's been in the master plan, it's been in the strategic plan to get into both. And I talk about this all the time, to go into chapter 7 and make modifications for administrative approvals, for other items that would really help maybe alleviate some of these pressures.
Can we hire another consulting firm to do these code changes that we need while we and TJ try to sort through the stuff that's on the plate? So the stuff that you're talking about, Terry, the administrative cleanup, I mean, we're coming up on the budgeting process. Can we either find it in what we have now to get started? Can we plan for that right at the first of the year? Like, it is one of our priorities. We're going to budget for code changes and efficiency, administrative procedure. Like, take that off. You know, you're still going to have to deal with that consultant, but at least that process could move forward.
All that sounds good. We're not precluded from, upping what we currently have with TJ's firm or finding other help. That would go above and beyond what we budgeted for, but that happens and we can accommodate for it.
And a planner, correct?
And a planner too. I mean, I know as far as
considerations for this budget cycle.
We're certainly trying to find a planner still, but I think I talked to it a little bit, getting on a tangent, but John and I went to the CML conference. TJ and I presented as part of a session on outsourcing development review. Room was really, really full with communities looking to outsource because of staffing challenges, specifically planners. Ridgway's not the only community seeing that type of challenge. So, I don't want to sit here and generalize and say everybody's having a hard time finding planners, but we haven't been able to find anyone to commit to moving to rural Southwest Colorado, living the Ridgway lifestyle, and working in that role. But TJ and his firm are doing a great job. Bo was alluding to this. We could modify the agreement we have with TJ's firm CPS, more of a retainer type agreement where we pay a set monthly premium which would afford TJ the ability to hire another planner or his firm that would be devoted to the town of Ridgway. So then we'd have TJ mainly, probably not as the main rep anymore, but someone else devoted to us, and then TJ as well. I mean, you're pretty spot on with some of what we can do here in the short term potentially, or at least budget for. There's plenty of ways to skin the cat, as Chase Jones used to say. So,
and I gotta say, Dana shouted out a minute ago, and I think we need to have a discussion about whether it's possible that we could do some form of moratorium on new development to give us the breathing room in order to make the changes we need to make.
That we can well receive the policy essentially.
But on the other hand, the other side of that, and Dana, don't yell at me, is we keep talking, about housing, right? And so the flip side of that is it is not going to be perceived well to suppress supply at a point supply is at a minimum. Now, if we can say that we're doing it pending some code changes, like we have to be really, really proactive about when that.
I don't, yeah. We're not.
No, I'm just voicing the thing that's gonna be said.
Well, and I don't think that's gonna be said by very many, because when I just mentioned how many units we have in the pipeline already, not counting a couple that are at sketch stage.
Yeah.
We're not suppressing.
I actually, Terry, you just said something.
So a carve out for affordable housing. It's an exception to that.
Yeah, so I do want to give the public a chance to speak. Dana, I know you're anxious to speak. Please keep your comments directed on the topic and try to keep it short and sweet. I know there's probably a number of people that want to talk to this, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know you could hear me. I was popping up just talking to myself and I said that.
Your mic was on.
Here's what I'm feeling. I am so proud of you guys. Go, go, go. At least you're seeing that we have a really bad problem in our town right now. I'm so proud of you for seeing it and trying to do something. I just want to tell you what I'm seeing is that you're more concerned about the developers than you are about the people that live here. And, we're not a monopoly game. This town is not a monopoly game. We don't need the fucking red hotels. We don't have the water out. God knows what else is happening. You need to consider the people that already live here and not be super paranoid, in my opinion, about the people that are, trying to make a fucking killing in this town, which is apparent with how many.
Please.
Just let me finish, all right?
Well, just please don't
Just
curse.
let me finish.
There's no reason to curse, please.
I'm sorry. Fuck is a word that I use all the time. It's not cursing, it's my vocabulary.
Me too in my
I'm sorry.
life.
Yeah, thank you. It's just my vocabulary. I'm so proud of you guys. I can't tell you how proud I am to try to find a solution to what's happening. And I really, really feel that you can put more on the building because you want to change the codes and you want to protect where we live and we don't have water. And I'm about to, when you did that water study, the people that did that did not take into account dust on snow, which is pretty frightening that they didn't take that into account, since we have an amazing organization that has, I can't tell you how much resources on dust on snow. So I just think that you have power. You have power. There's power with the code. You have the power. And I don't know about, because I'm not a lawyer, I'm not on town council, I'm not afraid of being sued, but I mean, we have to, I'm sorry, if we don't protect where we live, why is anybody going to protect anywhere else? If money is the only reason that things are happening in this town, then why are we even alive? I'm sorry. We need to protect the animals. We need to protect nature. We need to protect our water source and blah, blah, blah. You guys all know what I'm talking about. So I'll stop now, but I just want to tell you, congratulations for stepping up to the plate. I'm so proud of every single one of you. Keep it up, okay? Don't get scared. Don't back down. You have the power. You are elected officials. We elected you to protect us. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Dana.
Accept the fact that you have power. Accept it and use it.
We do.
Please.
We do. Thank you.
For good. Okay? For our children and our grandchildren. That's what it's all about, not us.
All right. I want to let other people have an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, bye. Thank you. Thank you.
And just try to remember to mute yourself so that when you're talking in enthusiasm about what we're doing, we can't necessarily hear you interrupting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Who else wants to speak?
that wants to speak. Fuck you.
And we need to, I don't know if anybody else in the audience wants to, I don't see any other hands up. But we just need to have at least a short discussion about whether or not we think, and I think what it would, to be clear, what it would involve is asking Bo to draft a either a moratorium or at the very least a emergency adjustment to the code to allow more time for review. But I think I would definitely entertain a moratorium to make code adjustments in order to further our eco action goals and our affordable housing goals. And I hear what you were saying, Beth, but I think we've got so many units in the pipeline. When you look at the number of people those units represent, granted, we need more affordable housing and not enough of this is affordable, but a lot of it is.
And John, I'm not anti-moratorium. I'm just making sure that we throw that into the discussion.
Consider also. So that, what else do you guys think? What you guys
I think it might be a both and. I think we need a moratorium and it's going to be an and. Either we need more time with TJ's firm to get stuff caught up to a place where it feels good, or we're going to need to extend those timelines. I think just we can put a moratorium, stop stuff from coming in, but burnout and sustainability is a concern.
Right.
So we need to make sure we can use that moratorium to add both for code and for getting caught up to a place where it's like, we could do this.
And then I know the focus right now, TJ, the planning world. Honestly, I'm more concerned about Joanne.
Yeah, that's true.
Joanne, she has her husband Ron helping out, and they do a phenomenal job. But like Joanne is inundated with work, and the pressure that comes with doing these very, very complete, comprehensive reviews to make sure everything conforms to not only the town code, but all of our standard specifications. It's the standards that are like the most daunting, I think. And I'm not even an engineer, but it's the engineering side that I'm.
And so extending those timelines would give her some breathing room to get that done. That's why I'm saying it's kind of a both and. We need to pause and then also stretch with what we have in the
As
pipe.
opposed to or including additional resources? Are you suggesting additional resources? Just more
I'm
time?
not suggesting necessarily additional resources. I think you really want to be careful about saying we need to hire more staff or need to do something else just because we're seeing this right now. John, I think you said it earlier, recession maybe pending, you never know when it's going to happen. You're talking people's livelihoods when you hire them and expect to sustain them in that position. So I don't know that that's necessarily what I'm recommending. It's certainly on the table, but more lengthy timeframes. I don't know if you remember, I think it was a year and a half ago, it was emergency ordinance allowing staff a 30-day completeness review on top of all of our other review periods. That was tremendously helpful at the time. It's a little bit helpful now. More time is definitely needed based on everything in the queue. So, and that's what Bo was talking about. He was making his remarks.
So at this juncture, just to be really clear about all this, because it's going to become, if it's not dropped in a very clear way, it's going to just become a public relations lightning rod issue over the word moratorium, right? So right now, effectively, we're discussing what does it take to enable the staff to have a longer review period for all of these applications coming through the door. That's the most critical piece right now.
That's great. Thanks for honing in on that. That's where I would recommend. You really want to be careful talking about the M word.
Yeah,
I'll turn that over to Bo.
Unless you
talk about that more.
proceed with T word, say temporary.
And
Well,
that's what I was trying to that's exactly what I was trying to distill, is if we're not completely clear about that we're trying to live up to what is in the master plan and to do due diligence to all of the applicants. The staff doesn't have the capacity based on time to complete it thoroughly and perfectly. And so we're trying, what do we, being a new council, I don't understand than what it takes? Do we have to grant a motion to change the time period that the staff has to do their work?
So provided that everyone, thank you. So provided that everyone was on board with what Bo mentioned before, an emergency ordinance, extending review timelines in some capacity, we have to go back and look and figure out how we wanted to shape that and present it to you all for consideration. It would take the form of an actual ordinance. You all would have to motion to vote approve that, and then it'd be codified and be reflected in the municipal code. We're talking about an emergency ordinance, which is different than a standard ordinance. It only takes one reading. A standard ordinance takes two over the course of 2 meetings. There's more to it than that, but that's what we're talking. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's the formal action that we need to take place to get these additional review periods in place.
Well, go ahead.
So yeah, just to piggyback on what I think JT's question was and what Preston provided, there's no action item that we're looking for tonight. This is just a matter of discussion, particularly because it was a late add to the agenda. And the reason that it was a late add is because, like I said, we had our staff meeting on Monday and we really kind of a lot of hand wringing in terms of the burdens that we're dealing with. And so I'm not positive that we just really wanted to check in with the council at the staff level to let the council and the community know that we're dealing with these issues. We're sure that you guys are hearing about it from the public and the constituents and frankly, dealing with it as well. As you mentioned, John, a lot of developers are reaching out to you. I know that you're on top of it, but just as a word of caution, we have to maintain our neutrality and prohibit ex parte communications if we have pending development applications or public hearings that are coming forward. That being said, I really feel like this is just, we're wanting to identify the problem first and foremost, with the goal being that in August, we bring in some suggested solutions, taking the feedback that we've received tonight, that we'd be potentially modifying procedures and policies, potentially looking at, sure, a moratorium. I mean, that's what we're hearing from the council and that's what we're hearing from the public. But we do need to make sure that there's a nexus or rational basis for that temporary approach.
I think several of us have said it up here that moratorium would be tied to code changes. Like that would be, we would want those to happen.
Yeah, allowing the time to make those code changes and potentially some staffing changes as well.
To stay true to our master plan, the climate action plan, the strategic objective of net zero, but there's footwork and there's research and there's a lot of legwork that has to be done. It's going to take time. My fear is anything we do now without being true to those things is, I hate to use the word cemented in stone, but it's going to affect us 30 years from now. So what we do today is permanent.
Polly wants to weigh in. Go ahead, Polly.
I completely agree on a temporary pause or something to that effect. And I did just want to make sure that Jennifer Cram's email from, it was back in May, but this really just fits in well with this this conversation. She was expressing her concern about the water situation. And I completely hear the, we do need affordable housing. Like that is definitely not something that I would like to overlook. However, it is definitely something to take into consideration. And it was brought up by someone, who voted for us and who is involved in our town. So I just wanted to make sure that that was brought up, noted, and that's it. Also, bless you, Bo.
Thanks, Paul.
Mayor, if I may just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
She doesn't have to if she doesn't want to, but I think it'd be worthwhile for you all to hear directly from Joanne. She may just say she doesn't want to talk, or may just say ditto. But Joanne, I know you have some thoughts on this. But
do you want to weigh in?
I'm not quite sure how to fix it, but it is the only work I'm getting done for Ridgway right now. Everything else that was on the list to happen this year has not. Part of the problem is a lot of them come back at the same time. It takes a really long time to go through a multi-unit development the first time, especially when they have a lot of infrastructure. And then even if we spread the schedule out, somehow we need to also figure out a way to stagger when they come back so that we're not getting 3 of them all in the same week back and need to turn them around in 2 weeks.
That's a really good point.
And I'm not sure how to do that. It really does seem like there's way too much right now. It's really consuming everybody's time to a point where little else is happening. Even Public Works is getting sucked up in it.
That just means everybody's work is being strained by it as well, so.
Yep.
That's a really good point she made. Sorry to just jump in and interrupt. But, granular activated carbon project, water treatment plant, haven't been able to move forward on that. Like she said, spending all our time on development review, preliminary needs assessment of the wastewater plant, haven't been able to move forward with that. Updating certain standard specifications. I think the remaining ones that need to be updated haven't been able to do that. There's a whole host of stuff. I won't say shit, but stuff that needs to be done. But there's just a lot. So
well, you know, it seems clear to me that the last thing we need is 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 more proposals coming across the desk asking to get in line. So I feel pretty strongly that we want to ask Bo to take a look at a way to, as Beth said, sort of a 2-pronged approach, which would be to say we want to pass an emergency ordinance to give staff more time, maybe even structure it so that it talks about multiple submittals at the same time and how it's kind of a first come first serve kind of thing. I don't know how you do that, but it seems like it ought to be possible to deal with the review issue, and then say we need 6 months, 9 months, something like that to put the brakes on it and say we're not accepting new development proposals because we need to catch up and we need to make some adjustments to our code so that we're doing the right thing. At least strategic plan levels that we talked about for a number of years. So that would be my.
The only tweak I would suggest, John, is that figuring out the staggering is something that we can use that 6 months of moratorium time to figure out. It's actually not tied to the more time on the developments we have now. That would be, when we come back online, we need a better process to stagger those, whatever that is. And then that would be rolled out.
I think we need that process now. I mean, if
Okay.
she's getting 3 submittals at one time.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, I guess
so
what you're
we're
saying.
gonna have to do a kind of a FIFO. I mean, even if it's goes down to date stamping when you receive their input. It's like, okay, we're gonna take X amount of time to deal with you. If there's another one came in 5 minutes later, it's like, we're gonna wait X amount of time until we start you, and then we'll churn through you. And then you get to the third one.
It sounds like we gave staff direction and Bo direction to try to look at suggested approaches to this. So I don't know, we need to create them now.
No, that's good conversation. Yeah, exactly. Bo, Joanne, TJ, and I will try to sort through it and then come back next week. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for all you guys do.
Thanks for bringing it up, what you do.
Yeah.
Burnout is the thing.
Yeah, that's not.
Burnout.
Yeah, I mean, it only goes so far right now, but every one of us up here is eternally grateful for how hard you guys work with the town of Ridgway, and you know, we urge you to do whatever you need to do, whatever you can do to make sure you don't totally fry yourself. And I know that's what we're trying to give you, the opportunity to make some changes and create the ability to do that. Paul, is there anything else you want to add?
I think this was really helpful, and from my perspective as a staff member, appreciate the support from council.
Awesome. Anybody else, either here in the room or on Zoom, have anything they want to add?
I think there's plenty of development happening, and I think people understand that if we can get that development actually finished, we'll have more housing. So I think people will understand the temporary moratorium so that we can just get the projects on the books finished.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. It sounds like we had enough discussion on that. Staff has direction. And that takes us to item number 14 under written and verbal reports, proposed schedule for preparation of the 2023 fiscal year budget. We'll have a document with dates.
Yep, so this is just the proposed schedule. Last few years, we've tried to present this to you in July to get ahead of it and get some dates in y'all's heads and figure out any conflicts, specifically as it relates to like the budget retreat and some of these standalone budget workshops in November. So this is what Pam and I came up with.
Which exotic island is the retreat on this year?
You tell me.
Please. It's fun.
I mean, Preston, you schedule it on my long weekend every year, budget retreat.
The retreat.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's right. Last year.
It's our long weekend
It's
after
your fall weekend?
conferences, yeah. But it'll be okay, I'll live.
Well, you know, that's the point of the conversation. If we need to look to a different weekend, we can.
Would you like to?
I mean, if I would propose, and I don't know if the weekend before, the week after works for people, I would just prefer to have my 3-day weekend.
Thanks, Sonia.
But
The weekend after would work as far as getting everything ready for
that's kind of what I was
next
thinking.
budget.
The 29th of October.
Be here for Halloween, coming costumes.
I mean, if we need to do the 22nd, like that is totally fine.
I'm up for giving you your long weekend. 29th works for me.
I am completely flexible and I am in support of that getting along.
Okay. Cool.
So
Kevin's on your side.
Yeah.
Especially since we're.
Paul, you can do 29th?
Yes, I can.
So October 29th for budget retreat. We'll see what Russ says about that.
Did 29th work for you, Russ? October 29th instead of the 22nd?
Yeah, I think so. Check. Quick. When do you start plumping up? Yeah, that's a general factor. Yeah, that's fine. Lots of cookies at the retreat.
That works for you, Russ? The 29th?
Yeah, 29th's good.
Okay, so I'll modify that for now. And, you know, it's a living document. We can change it if things come up or discuss changing it. Just wanted to get this before you. We'll start putting it in the packet in the upcoming months too, just so you guys have it and see it. Thank you.
November 17th workshop date. It's far out, it works for me. A bunch of us say that doesn't work, we should say so now.
Works for me.
That works for me as well.
That's 17th.
Correct. Okay. Seems like less than usual seems like we have often had, well, maybe the retreat. We used to do several budget workshops, and maybe the retreat keeps us from having to do 2 additional. But that looks good to me. Anything else on this item?
Nothing else.
All righty then. And again, anybody in the audience on Zoom, we're empty here in town hall in the audience. Anybody on Zoom want to weigh in on our budget schedule? Seeing none, we will move on to the town manager's report, which is another awesome report. You want to highlight some things for us, Chris?
I'll just highlight a couple of things. Main Street North project underway, fully under construction, going well. So there's hope. I think the aim is to be done towards the end of August. Joanne, I think August 26th or 29th or something is when they were shooting to be done with the full scope of work on Main Street between Charles and Otto. So, and no one knows this better than Russ. They're right there. What they're doing.
Quick question, they're preparing, I know we're splitting, I guess, the cost of the paving, it all happens at once, right? Paving on both sides, it's not like all of a sudden you're meeting the tunnel somewhere underneath the straight between France and England.
Right, yeah, it's all being done in one fell swoop. Right now, they're starting on the east side of the road and doing those improvements, and then they'll transition to the west. And that was part of the plan to accommodate the residents on the west side a little bit, just plan accordingly for when they definitely won't be able to have through traffic and stuff like that. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, I think it did. I knew that we were splitting the cost. I wasn't sure that like they're not in charge of paving half the road and we are.
oh, no, it's the town's project. We received the contribution from the property owner we're working with, and so it's ours to manage. It's all happening. The way a construction project really should make sense. Yeah. Sorry, I'll keep going. Just a couple more things. Pam and I kind of landed on Thursday, October 27th for the next tri-agency dinner that the town is hosting. Sweet. Which would be a couple days before the budget retreat. So just
Sorry. Forgot.
well, where would we post that?
Right here.
That's all right, you're all getting the leftovers from the trades.
That works.
And it's better costumes.
That works. Simplify it.
I like it.
Does that work for everyone? 27th. Okay, great.
Actually,
We will inform the other agencies. Already mentioned this before, Riverfront Village, PUD, Triangle Lot over there, they've moved forward with starting the stage and erecting the construction fencing around the parcel. Joanne and I hosted a pre-construction meeting with the Riverfront Village Development Team and their contractor FCI in mid-June. It was like June 17th. And so they're at a point to start working to put all the infrastructure in to support those 38 units and the 38 residential units and 4 commercial units. So we got to get all the infrastructure in to meet all the conditions of the preliminary plat approval to move forward to the final plat. So that's what's going on over there. Sustainability Advisory Board, we've already received 5 letters of interest as of 5 o'clock today. So still a few more weeks before the submittal deadline, but there's definitely plenty of interest in the new committee. We are having the Ridgway Marshal's Office is hosting an active shooter training in a couple weeks. Well, I shouldn't say a couple weeks, in a month, on August 17th here in Town Hall in this room. Shot a note out to you all. Terrible. I'm sorry.
No, just stop. Everybody stop. Stop. We're talking about active shooter drills. Just stop.
So if you're planning to attend, please RSVP to Deb, so we can plan accordingly. We'll do lunch, like lunch. So I think that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
The one thing I wanted to raise is that I think a couple of the people who are going to apply to be on the Sustainability Advisory Board are likely to be out of town. And in the report, it says we're going to interview people at our August meeting. I would say that they probably don't have to be here to be considered. But do we want to consider a different date for doing interviews? Or would we rather just do them then people can't attend? It doesn't necessarily mean they won't get equal consideration. How do we do it? How do we want to do it?
It's a great question. I think it's up to you all.
Yeah,
So whatever you all want to do.
specifically, I think Dana and Angela both are going to be out of town, according to Dana. So, and I don't think they're going to be somewhere where they can zoom in.
Of the applicants, or were those the only two?
That Dana, you might emailed me today about this. So they're the only two that said they want. I don't know if the others are not.
We can look to a different council meeting date, request that they do a short video expressing why they want to be on the on the board. I mean, the interviews are essentially a forum for you all to ask questions about why they want to serve and what they bring to the table, right? So
Would you be willing to reach out to everybody who's applied and give them that, offer that alternative if they can't be here on the 10th?
Yeah, if everyone is cool with that.
Oh.
Question also on, I know the deadline's coming up for submitting a letter of application, interest, sorry, I'm getting a little tired here. Remind me, other than email blasts out to folks, is it, I'm not on social media much these days. How else are people learning about that?
Yeah, we put it out on the town's Facebook page. We can do another, say blast post on Facebook. The town's
Virtual response.
the marketing platform we use to put our press releases and stuff out, that's gone out there. It's on the homepage of the website in green. So I think some more social media posts could probably bolster that. But
And we're ready to copy and post that on personal page. And stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've done direct, reach outs to different folks as well.
Is there anything else you'd like us to do?
I was just curious, but I've been thinking about that for a couple weeks, but I think I got to ask, so I just wasn't sure where it was showing up for people.
Yeah, I'd say feel free to share it far and wide. And same to everybody else.
My only other thought was some of the other, like the youth advisory. I know most of this has been going out to adults and stuff. But I recently thought like it might be great to have a young person on there as well. So maybe a direct reach out there too, and I could spearhead that.
Great. Yeah, we can. Yeah, it's a great thought. We'll you reach out to the school district and do what we can to try to encourage participation there.
Follow up. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else on town manager's report? I don't know about the joke this week.
I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I literally snorted out loud.
Thank you.
Molly.
It's so nice. That's all I did.
Agree to disagree on that one.
We didn't expect anything else from you, Bob.
Preston, you ran such a nice meeting tonight. It was a solid report. Everything's going well, and that was the effort. I'm a little bit disappointed.
I mean, it wasn't really a dad joke. It was more like I saw it on Instagram. It was a meme. So full disclosure, it should have been a meme of
Terrible dactyl. How did you not at least giggle a little?
Yeah.
I think I'm with Pam on this one.
There's disagreement up here.
I know, and I kind of feel bad.
I tried, but this was so bad. I was like, nothing there.
No, boy. I think we need to continue to encourage everyone to submit alternatives.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I think we need a final ruling from the law enforcement official.
Did you read the joke?
This is official.
Did you read it?
Yes. I did. And
When I finished it, I just exited out the whole thing.
Wow. At least you didn't, never really had suggest you're gonna arrest them.
That
was a cry.
Preston, I think you need to open it up to let people submit jokes. You can put yours in and others can.
No, he has fully encouraged the critique of the joke every month. Like, let's be really honest.
But-
Preston is a
but I like the
full
idea.
participant in the thing.
Did it take the pressure off? We could rotate each one of the has to.
I like that.
I'm just gonna give you a fun science fact and not a joke. I don't play joking. It's not my jam.
Well, that is.
Well, I'd say it's open, whatever you want to do. If you want to submit a joke, if you want to submit your own joke separately, staff, council, planning commission, go for it.
Okay, nothing's gonna change.
Plain dealer, Aaron's here.
Aaron, you're able to do that as well. All right, where are we at? We have an executive session, but I'd like to ask if there are any committee reports. In the meantime,
I just want to say that I am so excited that Ridgway is part of Colorado Communities for Climate Action. I was missed last meeting because I was at the conference, and that ability to continue to network with larger municipalities and thinking about places like the city of Denver, county of Denver that have full offices that focus on sustainability. It really is a worthwhile use of our town funds to send someone up there and work on those relationships and talk about and have that voice at the Capitol lobbying for policies and laws at the state level. Heads up, as we think about budgeting, it'll be a year out, so not this next year, but I believe the plan is to raise some of the membership fees, and they're relatively cheap right now for as much lobbying is happening on our behalf. So anyway, I just want to say that I can reiterate that that is a really valuable thing that Ridgway has been a part of. And I carpooled with Jay Lee since we were going to a climate conference, and we do a county vehicle. So we only sent one vehicle from Murray County.
great. And just for everybody's information, Jacob Smith, who's the executive director, CC Forcier, he's coming through in August, and he couldn't be here for the council meeting, but Joan May from over in San Miguel County, who also works for CC Forcier, she will come to the council meeting on the 10th, tentatively, and then Jacob is coming sometime between like the 18th, 19th, and will be able to meet with any of us that want to meet with him. So they do great work. I've testified on a number of items, everything from an EPA hearing to some state legislation with their prompting, and they've given me background to build my comments. It's been really, really positive. They do great work. So thanks for mentioning that, Beth. Anybody else?
We have a Ridgway County Water Users Association meeting coming up on the 21st. One of the things I've had added to the agenda is we can provide an alternate, JT. So they're going to vote on that on the 21st. So ideally, we'll get you in there. Great involved in that process.
Anybody else?
My Adobe crashed. I had everything in front of me. I was not going to, Terry and I both attended, and Terry presented at the last Snapples Energy board meeting. That was my first meeting there, taking over Beth's spot. Totally enjoyed exactly a lot of the information that was just shared with us tonight. And subsequently from that, Kim Wheels put me in touch with the folks at Western Water Assessment over on the Front Range. Turns out that we all used to work for the same boss through INSTAR, which is the Institute for Arctic and Alpine Research. And what they recently sent me in our communications related to the Sustainability Advisory Board is all the studies they did on resiliency for Carbondale, Cortez, Durango, which basically they do is look at some of the existing studies they have on like such as the LRE water report. They look at energy budgets, all of that, very similar to what EcoAction does, but they go into much more detail and help towns build a resiliency plan facing climate issues. So that was a great gateway into that from the Samples Energy Board, vis-a-vis Kim Wheels. And then subsequently, the other meeting that Terry and I also attended was the San Miguel Power Association roundtable discussion on, and this one was focused on beneficial electrification. And that was one of the best roundtable discussions I've been a part of, with a real diversity of people involved in that conversation, from Mountain Village, Telluride to county commissioners. And it definitely put a spotlight on the amount of super experienced folks in this region that are great resources. Many more than I knew about, who are working on some really critical issues. So very rich meeting. I'm looking forward to the next round. Also,
Awesome. Very cool stuff. Anyone else?
That's something. Have you guys received any feedback on your radar signs that have been put up? So
Yeah.
I know it's only anecdotal, but I've seen a decrease, I think, in speed from, and I spent significant time on it. So,
I agree. I've noticed coming, like, when I come back from Montrose, turn on to 62, and I see people in front of me see that sign, and brake lights come on.
Yep.
It's very obvious, so.
So I do see it, and we spend hours a day on Sherman Street, so I think it's working for now.
I still haven't seen it blink. You said it blinks.
Well, because you don't see
it. Talk to a scofflaws.
Yes.
I've seen, like, I think it says something like,
It's too fast or slow down.
or no, it's something nice. It seemed like I was looking at it, I'm like, why is that sign so polite?
It is,
Like,
it's like, please slow
Pay
down.
attention to your speed or something like that.
Yeah, it's,
Well, it stops at 25, it freezes at 25 instead of blink. So
but what's
if
the
you're-
message you get if we're going 30?
I haven't had
Shoots
that.
a
You wouldn't
paintball
see
at
that,
it.
right?
It's too fast, slow down.
But I think it's more polite than that. It's
I know
like,
it is. It was
there's a
polite. I remember
please in there or
seeing it.
something.
Right.
Well, I'll have to go out and just to test it. I'll try it.
GT, take a smarter second.
Thanks, Ryan. I think it's good. I think it's definitely good. Now we need to work on the darn Jake brakes. Those guys. Anyway,
Amen.
man,
So
we
I
all,
noticed in the town report, 2 new vehicles, neither one of them are electric, just saying.
We talked about this.
I know, I'm just bringing it up.
did come in under money. He's talking about that concrete again,
That's right.
placed in concrete. That's, it's a good point.
So the EV readiness plan that they talked about, we've got the 2 counties, town of Mountain Village, town of Telluride, that are participating directly in trying to get feasibility studies for EV fleet conversion. I think we should consider joining that effort, just to do the feasibility study.
I mean, the advantage of electric for cop cars, they are so fast. They are so fast. And cops drive short distances. I mean, an electric vehicle would be natural, would be expensive, but I think.
Well, if I remember correctly from the budgeting process last year, Shane was like, it's just not there with the electronic, like, we need more big cities to.
Outfitting them with-
Yeah, we need
With all
to,
the
he was basically, we need more big cities to do it so that it trickles down and it's
It's happening.
feasible for us.
Sure. It's also happening with
Topography.
utility trucks and pickup trucks. They're offering electric utility trucks with booms and the whole bit now.
Cool.
It's starting to happen.
It's a start now.
I will say that with my new plug-in hybrid, 4 out of 5 times that I come down here, including tonight to charge, I'm out of luck. It's full up. It's full up.
You can
Including.
go to San Miguel Power, we've got one, and there's 2 at the school.
Yeah, but it's at the school.
Which can't walk to San Miguel.
I could,
He'd have had to come early or jog or something.
and I did come over. But,
That's right. You
and-
were the first one.
And I can walk from over there, but I like to charge here because it's so much faster.
These are the fastest chargers in town.
Yeah,
Way
2
faster
hours.
than here.
2 hours.
Faster than over there?
Yeah.
2
Faster than
hours.
the ones at San Miguel.
2
I
hours.
heard
full
that from
charge.
more than one person. Sorry.
And it's free.
2 hours full charge here for me, from empty to full. 11 hours at my house. I don't have a 220, 240.
So you've got this level 1 charger.
Yeah. I just have.
That's a turtle.
So comparatively, it's great because in 2 hours I can drop it off at 5 o'clock in the morning, go do my stuff, come back here, get in it, go to Montrose and
Do
back.
you have to pay for it here now?
No.
So the Rock is paying for. So that's another reason.
Yeah.
Free flow.
All right, let's,
Sorry.
we have an executive session with a couple items, so, unless anybody has anything else, Bo, will you read the citation, please?
We've got a few participants need to drop.
Yeah, but they don't need to drop it. So. Okay.
Let me get there 1 second. We've got 2 executive session agenda items. One is a personnel matter with respect to the town manager's annual evaluation, and the second is a matter that is subject to negotiation and for receiving legal advice. So if we could get a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for the purpose of receiving legal advice, and 4024E for determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators regarding the Wolf Cattle Company property. And then 2, Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-4024F for a discussion of personnel matter concerning the town manager's annual performance evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Russ, seconded by Terry. Roll call vote, please.
Council members NX,
Aye.
Brambley,
Aye.
Latham. It's right there. Schuyler,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Aye. Beth, your thumbs up on executive session?
Absolutely.
Aye. All right, passes unanimously. So, thank you, everybody on Zoom. You need to hop off, and thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate your participation, and we will see you sometime next month.
Jack.
Preston, did we want to do the evaluation first, or did we want to do the other issue?
Jack, are you still on, Jack Petroselli?
No.
Can we just, are we trying to keep the recording going? And Preston could probably kick him off.
Yeah, I think just announcing, hey, Jack, we're gonna boot you. You're probably just not at your computer, for the record.
Jack's been on since last session.
Yeah. See you, Jack.
In response to Bo's question, I'd like to do Wolf first.
So that you can get off and get some rest?
Yeah, or at least dinner.
That works fine. So is that all right with you?
That works fine. I can drop, you don't need me for the second part either, right? So.
Don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right, cool, great.
I need to text us your text for closing and all, but.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
All right, are we ready, Mayor?
I think so.